When I had kids, I knew time would accelerate, and it just does. Like all of a sudden, a year feels like a month, and that's what
I don't even have kids, and I'm there already. Like,
yeah.
I just came back from Liberia. It's already July. How does that make sense? Like, it was just May. So yeah, it's going. Okay, so we were kind of pre-gaming. This is not going to be live. Let me know when you want to start recording.
It's recording. I wanted to capture some.
Oh, you already.
Yeah. I wanted to capture some good, heartwarming moments before we start.
Well, okay, we almost met Mark on TikTok Live.
We did,
Yeah.
And you bounced out right before I got on, and I'm like,
exactly.
When did I? Which live?
Let's see,
on
was
D,
April?
ask D. Yeah, it was April.
Yeah, I was in Oman at the time.
But honestly, I was too nervous to be on with you at that time. I'm like, I'm not prepared for Roy. I am not prepared for Roy. No. And I was like, so I was kind of relieved that we didn't make acquaintances right then. I'm like, dude, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for him.
Well, I asked such a lame question of Elon Papa anyway, so I'm glad you weren't there.
No, really? I missed him too.
I'm like, here's
I did talk to
ask Elon Papa a good question, and I just felt
I
asked him a lame question. So.
No, if you and I would have been on that live together, I would have been so nervous. I'd be like, Roy, do you think America's gonna? God, I don't know. I would have been so nervous. No, I would have fucked those questions up. Now I'm fucking prepared. I got these goddamn questions nailed down. Like I took a lot of. This is the most prep I've ever done for an episode, and I'm still gonna fuck it up, but fuck it, whatever. But all right, we'll start though, because we're gonna, it's free range here. We're not live. All right, I'm gonna read this intro and monologue, and I'm really bad at this. This is where I do not excel. All right, what up, family? Welcome back to Colonial Outcast Historian Edition. For those of you who've been with us since we started, our very first episode was with Dr. Liam O'Mara, or as I like to call him, Obi-Wan O'Mara. And with the utter absurdity in our news cycle, I think we have been long overdue for a historian's perspective. But today, we have another Jedi Master of history who you may recognize, Dr. Roy Casagranda, and one of his Padawans from her days in college, who also you might recognize on TikTok and Instagram, Serene Sovereign. So make sure you go and follow her. And I cannot think of a better duo to explore what we're about to get into other than these two. But before we do that, and before I give a more proper intro to Doc and Serene, I would like to address anyone in the audience who may be feeling like they're in a dark cloud of futility right now. I titled this episode World War III or Worldwide Revolution because I know a lot of you feel overwhelmed with the barrage of unhinged, horrific back-to-back bad news to the point where you are in shock, depression, horror, survivor's guilt, or all of the above at once. But understand that this is very intentional, and that is the goal of the ruling class. All of this was meant to be your death spiral to despair, to the point where you feel as if you are just another inconsequential spectator of history, a mere dot on the space rock, completely helpless and combat-ineffective to help your fellow humans from war, genocide, and capital slavery. But I assure you that is not the case. You are, in fact, living in a time where your voice has more power than people have ever had in human history. And while we are witnessing the unraveling and unmasking of the true sinister nature of empire and capital, therein lies the hope, actually. As the new era of a social awakening is sweeping the globe with every act of hypocrisy by the ruling class being laid bare, only increasing the growing numbers of various cultures and demographics uniting against it. The question is, and this is the only question for me that's on my mind lately, is will this lead to a tangible revolution? Because in my not so humble opinion, there is no other choice for us right now. There has to be a revolution or we will lose this planet and everyone in it to the most perverse and vile elites and their sick desires of control over everything. Now, to help us at least address this question, Dr. Roy Casagranda, who is a professor of political science, a public scholar, a chaos monger, as he likes to self-identify as, whose YouTube channel is listed in the description, will be putting the current events unfolding in a dialectical historical context with his former student, Serene, pro-Palestinian and Palestinian pan-African anti-imperialist Jedi Master in training, who used to be a student of Roy, and so that we can analyze what is needed for a worldwide revolution. So Roy, Serene, thank you so much for not only blessing our podcast with your presence, but being able and willing to tackle this topic for the sake of humanity. Both of you have been such a beacon of wisdom and knowledge in a time of insane propaganda and deception. So how are y'all doing?
I want to start by saying Serene's done been trained. She's
She
she's already a Jedi Master.
Oh my God. Too honorable. Oh, your screen is frozen. But actually, I need to share a story about Roy before we even get him to start talking. Roy, are you still there with us? You're free. Your
I am. I'm still here.
Okay.
Do me a favor, Roy. I don't know if you have settings there, if you see settings, but turn off your camera and turn it back on because you're frozen in time right now. It looks like you're just listening to us with it. Huh.
Did that work?
No, you're still frozen. It's a beautiful picture of you, though. It's a beautiful still.
It's a good freeze. Okay. No.
Nope, same one.
Nope.
It is a work of art, though. It's like a painting.
Okay.
Okay, so let's figure this out. Let me think. Well, Roy, how about do this? Try this. Click out of this.
Okay.
We're still rolling. We're not going to lose the roll. So just go ahead and hit exit out and then go back in. It should work.
So I met Roy. This was 2007, from 2007 to 2009. It was like 2 years of college. And this was back in Austin Community College, Texas. And I believe the class I took, it was either U.S. history or U.S. government, right?
U.S. government.
So, and this is also my first year in America. The first month, I already had buyer's regret, but, I was there for college. And you walk into a government classroom, you expect to learn about the Constitution and 3 branches of government, basic civics. And this man completely throws the curriculum out the window and goes, we're going to learn about OPEC and corporations and Middle Eastern history and all the countries we're bombing. And then he takes it even back to the Crusades and, Arab civilization and its influence on Western civilization. And mind you, we're in Texas, right? I mean, granted, it was Austin, so one of the more liberal cities, but it's like a whole room of white kids being subjected to Middle Eastern history. And I'm just sitting there, like, oh my God, this is the best professor ever. I'm so happy that I took that class. And, he had such a big impact on just my political knowledge and journey to where I am right now. And in fact, this is kind of a full circle moment for me because a lot of you guys know me for the content I make on Palestine and Israel. And one of my most viral videos was from a video I made on this book, right? The Israel. And I probably would have never heard of this book if it wasn't for Roy. He was the one who recommended it to me way back in 2008 or 9. I borrowed it from him, from his, his little.
Is that my book?
Is it? I don't know if I bought it or I just kept it. I just know I've had this for a while. I think I bought
That's why Roy came on the episode. He just wanted to see if you actually stole it. Now he has his evidence.
So, just a really full circle moment for me. I'm so happy that he's here. Thank you again for, accepting to be here. And we're so excited to hear your insight on current events and also what's in it for the future for us. All right, so
that's a good question. I'm hoping you guys are going to answer that.
We just had a crazy development that I don't even know. I don't think you've even heard the news yet. This literally just happened. Okay, you did get it. Damn it! Oh, see, I was hoping I would get to the news before Roy. Damn, that would have been. I would have been able to brag about that. I was like, bro, I told Roy about something, but no, you took that away from me, Roy. Thanks for that.
I'm sorry.
Dude, that would have been such good bragging rights, man. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna play. We're gonna play. Yeah, we're gonna play this video that literally just came out. I happened to stumble upon it when I was searching for videos on YouTube, and I caught the live. So I'm gonna try to share this. If I can.
President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that, 94 districts. And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. And on immigration, on a side note, today marks 2,711 arrests on these terrorists and these gangs. Total arrest today with HSI investigations. And thank you, Stephen Miller. Thank you to Homeland Security. Thank you to everyone working hand in hand with the FBI on all of these transnational gangs. TDA has been a huge terror to our country, as well as MS-13, as well as Sinaloa cartels. No longer. These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that. This has been a bipartisan problem that has lasted 5 presidential terms, 5 different presidents, and it has ended today. We will continue to fight for President Trump's policies. I want to thank the Office of White House Counsel, Dave Warrington. You and your staff have been incredible.
Okay, enough of that shit. So much irony there, and there is so much packed into that we can analyze through history from an historical context. And first of all, this brings up, first of all, I want to ask the question, are we in episode 1 or 2 of the Star Wars franchise? Is this the part where Emperor Palpatine is, I think this is episode 2, right? This is the Clone Wars, correct?
Probably, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So we all saw this coming, but this episode, what we're getting at is obviously revolution. But in the context of, we're seeing what I'm calling the golden window that I've been telling people. We are in a golden window of revolution in the sense that we are seeing the disillusionment of MAGA and conservatives, and we are seeing the extreme left come together. And then we're seeing the liberals and neocons in between, and they're completely doubling down in this core of SS division of the empire. Whereas the left and the working class right is, with their disillusionment, we can possibly see some overlap. The question is, are we going to be able to unite on class lines in time before the empire throws out another psyop that divides the working class right and the working class left? Because I do see some disillusionment happening with MAGA. We are seeing a massive exodus out of MAGA. The only ones left, like I said, are the SS division of MAGA. And I want to know, how can we capitalize on that? How can we create a class consciousness before the empire rolls out the next thing that will completely divide us? And we're already seeing that with, fear mongering about going to war with Iran, in the sense that we're dealing with two methods here: divide and conquer, but also unite and conquer. So the tactic of uniting everybody in a multicultural way against outsiders, whether it be immigrants through ICE or whether it be against Iran. That's kind of the theme I'm going with for this episode, but I want to roll it back with history. So Roy, I'm going to give you the floor on this one.
Okay, first, I have to comment on what Press Secretary was just saying, because it's really actually kind of amazing to me. At the current rate they're deporting undocumented immigrants, if I'm right, it'll take 1,200 years to clear the U.S. of the undocumented immigrants. So in my mind, that's actually really good news.
Right.
So,
yeah.
They need to speed this up. So the question about whether or not you can get the working class to move is, I mean, a question the United States has been working on since the 19th century. And there have definitely been moments when we've seen the working class mobilize and the working class go in one direction or the other. 1890s, 1930s, and then of course 1960s. But for the majority, I think, of the most recent, the contemporary period, the working class has not been mobilized very effectively. I mean, we're starting to see unionization happening, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about what the Reagan Revolution did and the subsequent years, so the last 45 or so years, is that it has made right-wing ideology palatable for working class people in the United States, and I find that amazing for so many reasons, because it's counterintuitive. I mean, how do you get a person who's catastrophically underpaid, barely makes the rent, barely has enough money to clothe their kids? How do you get them to vote to cut taxes for the rich? If you had told me that from a logical standpoint, I didn't know anything about the United States, that was what you were going to try to pull off, I would tell you that doesn't make any sense. How would voters go that direction? And I think one of the things that gets the American working class and allows this trap to happen is that at some level, there is an understanding that the United States does evil. It does evil domestically, it does evil internationally, right? We bomb third world countries, we overthrow democracies, we plunder, pillage resources from poor countries, bring them back to the United States. We overthrow democracies in part because that's what we're trying to do, right? Like the term banana republic, that came about because every time a Central American state would raise the price of bananas so that they could pay their peasant class a decent wage, we would send in the Marine Corps and overthrow their government and install a puppet government, because we didn't want the price of bananas to go up. I mean, we literally overthrew Honduras's government. I think it was 8 times. I think we did Nicaragua 7 times and Guatemala 5 times over the course of like a 4-decade period. And it was literally because of bananas. So Banana Republic is a terrible name for a clothing line. Why did somebody think that was a good name? Let's commemorate that.
That's a good question. Why did they name it that? You just gave me one question I'm going to Google later on to find out why they called it Banana Republic.
What was that about? So I think at some level, the U.S. population, and then make it worse, right? What we did to the Native Americans, what we did to African slaves, what we did to the working class in the 19th century, what we did to immigrants as they came in, the torment we put the Irish through, the unbelievably horrible way we treated Italian Americans when they came, right? You just stack it on top of it. I think people go, but I want to be good, and I want to be part of something that's good. And so the way they do that is they make cognitive dissonance. Instead of trying to change the United States, they do cognitive dissonance, and then they separate the evil, and then they go, oh, you know what? The Democrats keep saying that we do bad things. The Republicans keep saying that we do good things. I'm just going to become a Republican so I can believe that. And then they just dismiss all the facts that contradict this idea. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the classroom, and I'm going through the list, like international relations class. I'm going through the list of all the things we've done. And somebody will go, yeah, but don't we do more good than harm? And you're like, what? How did you get this?
I think it's also like conflating conservative values to the Republican Party, right? So it's kind of like a funnel where it's like, oh, Christianity. Then there's also like another funnel for like red pill men. And then there's another funnel for, housewives, and another funnel. Like there are all these different conservative value funnels that they just kind of just pipeline into like the alt-right without people really, I don't think a lot of people are even aware that this connection is being made. They just, like you said, they follow it because they think they're being good.
Yeah, the point you're making is amazing. So that's one of the genius things about the Republican Party is it's a coalition of all these completely separate populations. You know, like why are housewives wanting to vote in the same direction that Elon Musk is? Like they should be automatically voting against him because he doesn't stand for anything they do. And that's what the Republicans have pulled off. They've created this really amazing coalition from these disparate populations. And then one of the things that's part of this is all the boomers who were in the 60s protesting with their buckskin jackets high as a kite, having premarital sex. And now they're all born again fundamentalist Christians who are voting Republican. You're like, dude, what happened to you? I think you need to draw more LSD. I think there's not enough drugs in your life. How did you go from that to this?
They definitely need to do more psychedelics out in the woods instead of doing ketamine in a clinic. It's the ketamine. The ketamine's fucking them up. They're doing it in a clinic setting, and they're not doing like magic mushrooms out in the woods. That's what it is.
I agree. I think we should ban ketamine and legalize magic mushrooms.
Absolutely.
Help the boomers get back to their 60s roots. Like, what happened to them? They were so promising.
You brought up you bring up a good you and Serene brought up two amazing points, and I want to play a video that to me I probably played this video like 6 times on this podcast, and the irony of this video never ceases to amaze me, especially when it comes to Republicans accepting forms of government and forms of authoritarianism that they never would have accepted under the Obama administration. If I can just find it.
Ready to patrol the streets of Los Angeles, rocked by widespread violence.
My name's Alex Jones. I'm a radio and television host in Austin, Texas. And for many years, I've been exposing the criminal activities of the global elite, otherwise known as the New World Order. These folks don't make their money out of the production of goods and services or via creativity. They make their money, and their stock and trade is slavery, control of populations. In the next 2 hours, you will see hardcore documentation, evidence that is irrefutable that America is turning into a nightmarish police state. Cameras on the street corners, mass checkpoints on our major interstate highways, warrantless searches. But worst of all, you'll see America's military being perverted, being turned into an instrument of control, not an instrument of defense. I have footage, and you're going to see it, of Marines engaging in mock gun confiscations, kicking in doors, setting up concentration camps.
Alex Jones, about 15 years ago, talking and warning the public about a coming police state where there's a ruling, where there's an elite class of billionaires that just suck our money up, and they are now employing martial tactics to force us into slavery. Everything he said literally was on point. The irony, though, about that video is that same audience, that same demographic that loved Alex Jones is now actively cheering on a police state because of just one thing. There's just one thing that they had to switch to get them to accept a police state. Because under the Obama administration, he also paved the way for a police state. He's a piece of shit just like Donald Trump is. But the only thing they had to change was the branding. They just had to swap the brand. And that's what I want to go in with you, Roy, Doc, is we've seen this happen in history before so many times. Can you walk us through that methodology that Empire has used to simply get people on board the most horrific shit just by adding a little flavor to it that they like, mixing the soup up with the right spices to get them to swallow the soup?
Well, in the case of the United States, and you can do this with Nazi Germany as well. Part of it was the realization, and this realization happened right off the bat, the very beginning of the United States as a republic. The problem wasn't convincing people to come vote. The problem was, or to vote for you. Let me rephrase that. The problem wasn't to make the better argument to convince a person to switch their vote to you. The problem was getting them to go to the voting booth. That at the end of the day, on voting day, the average voter would just assume sit home and not go vote because it takes time out of their day. So, and then of course, since it's on a Tuesday, it takes time out of their work day. They may lose money because they're not getting paid. So there's an added incentive even there to not go vote. So what politicians realized real early on, like right away, it took maybe 2 elections to figure this out. If I can fill my voters with hatred and fear, they will turn out. Those are the 2 emotions that get people to turn out. If you can scare them badly enough or just get them to hate something badly enough. You have to be really careful because disgust is a different emotion and that'll get people to stay home. So you can't disgust your voters, but if you can fill them with fear and hatred, you've got a winning combination. And so, if I have 2 politicians standing up for a debate and one is being rational and talking about all these amazing policies they want to implement, and the other person is talking about how there are lizard people who are going to forcibly make your children become transgender and they're going to eat your pets, that guy's going to win. Mm-hmm. Not because they have the better argument, not because they convinced people to switch their vote, but because they got their lazy voters to go to the voting booth and the other guy didn't. And that's the problem. So the art of this is trying to get, through manipulation, trying to get your voter to show up. Now, here's what I don't get. How many years have we been watching these politicians, one after the other, one charlatan after the other, make promises to us, get up, and then it turns out they hoodwinked us. And then Republican, right? Both parties, bunch of scumbags.
Yeah.
And yet, every 4 years, it's like people are drinking Kool-Aid going, he's my guy, he's going to do it. I love what he's saying. And you're like, yeah. What the heck? How do you believe anything coming out of their garbage lying mouths? Like, what is wrong with you? And part of the problem is the average USer is a baby. They have the emotional development of a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old. They haven't grown up. And one of the reasons is because the country is set up to entertain you. The goal is to keep you distracted, keep you entertained, keep you on the side. The education system in most states is garbage, right? Probably 10, 15 states have an amazing public education system. 35 have a garbage education system. And so the system is designed to have poorly educated people who are entertained, who want to think highly about themselves. And so if you got the right politician to say the right set of things and then scapegoat the right group of people, the hilarious thing, of course, about immigrants is they're the ones least likely to commit crimes. Like if you really wanted to lower the crime rate in the United States, it's get rid of white people. White people are the problem. And Hollywood makes it so it's black people, but it's not true, right? As a percentage of the population, a white person is more likely to be a drug dealer than a black person. And but we've so infused with the racism, we just automatically assume brown and black people are. So all I have to do is get up in front of a white audience and tell them, look at all these immigrants. And the white audience goes, yeah, they're all brown and black. Where are these people coming from? And then you can feel their hatred and their racism that they have to believe in. Because think of, as a person who's always received white privilege despite my Mexican sounding last name, to my knowledge, I've never not received white privilege. White privilege is so, I can't describe how incredible it is. It changes my wife and I will be in a situation, she's brown, and my wife and I will be in a situation where we want to do something, and I'll go, you know what, I'll just go white man this. And literally, I can get us into spaces where people are blocked from going in just because I'm wearing a suit, just because I'm a male, and just because I'm white. Mm-hmm. That means there's a bunch of white people who are in positions of power and authority, who are in positions that are wonderful, who didn't earn it. They didn't get it through merit. They got it through racism and sexism. And the only way to make that make sense in your head then is to go, well, it's because I really am better. And I think that combination of things fuels events like the rise of the Nazis, right? Because there's all these Germans running around trying to feel good after what happened in World War I. And so in the United States, I don't know what our World War I problem is. Like, what is it about white suburban life that made all these white people go crazy and want to kill the republic and create a monarchy with a low IQ person? When he speaks, you can't, it's gibberish. It makes no sense. Like, he's an idiot. And yet here we are, and we're doing this, and we're risking World War III. We're risking Civil War. He's going to possibly tank the economy, like the one thing everybody was going to vote for him for, which was a stupid idea to begin with, because if you really wanted the economy to be okay, you would have elected the brown Asian woman, but the black Asian woman. Is she a Blasian? I feel like that should be a new thing.
I believe she made different claims of what she was throughout it, depending on what the brand was at the time that they needed to appeal to. I mean, it was it's interesting too, like this duopoly play that they do. The Democrats, me and Serene were just talking about this, about how Democrats are, if this was a parental situation, Republicans are the abusive father. And they beat the kids, and the Democrats are the apologetic mother who comes in to the room to consult the child and prevent them from running away from the abuse.
I love that. That is awesome.
I need listen. I know your dad is very angry right now. We just need to let him calm down, but understand that he, we just have to do better and please him, and then everything will be fine. I promise. Okay. I'm sorry. I'll go talk to dad. Okay, but don't run away from the plantation. Don't do that. That's how I see the dynamic between the Republican and Democrat. You brought something up where the Democrats with, like, say, I see this pendulum swing where we had George Bush, Texan, fearmonger, ignorant, very obvious. Like, they make it, the ruling class always presents a character that is very obviously some type of archetype. And Bush was that archetype. Ignorant, Islamophobic, ready to go to war, terrorist, terrorist, Patriot Act, right? And then you had Obama, who aesthetically was the complete opposite. He is a statesman. He's sophisticated. He's well presented. He's handsome. He's not that ignorant Texan, and he's black. And he gets the liberals on board with imperialism and a police state and xenophobia against immigrants. And he boosts up ICE, and he increases the power of the prison industrial complex through billion-dollar contracts. Okay, then he's presented as like this woke character, right? To the Republicans who think that he's going to become a tyrant, who think that he's going to become the next authoritarian Mussolini. They're presented with this image of Obama, correctly so. So the response is then back to the white guy, back to the ignorant, racist white guy, Donald Trump. He's the solution to this black, sophisticated, liberal statesman. And now the pendulum swings this way, and now you can grab the right wing and put them on board with the police state. Basically, like Serene said, funneling everybody into an authoritarian, capitalist, feudalist society where we are enslaved, everybody. And it's just genius to me that they're able to do that with the pendulum swing. So my question is, like, from a historical perspective, is this sustainable, or is this the last cycle of that pendulum swing? Because as I'm seeing right now, a lot of MAGA is leaving MAGA, or they're leaving Trump because of his support for Israel, because of what he's doing with, like, Palantir. That was a huge one for MAGA, to see them consolidating all of our info into a fucking AI program. Like, that is completely contrary to everything libertarian and everything like conservative family values that they were preached to buy it. So is this the last swing, or are we going to see the Democrats now pull everybody this way to be on board with more authoritarianism? Like, I just want to know, can we capitalize on this moment of history where MAGA is becoming disenfranchised? Finally, a lot of them are, besides his SS core division. That's all.
Add something. Because
sorry.
we're at a point where the Democrats don't even have to try to sell anything, right? They don't even have to run on policy anymore because the main culprits are really that Republican conservative base, right? They're the ones buying into, these values that they think they're voting for. And all the Democrats got to do is, we can't let them win. You got to vote for us now. It doesn't, we don't even have to run on policy. We just cannot let them win. Vote against that. So I really don't even see how, it's the end of the Democratic Party because they're not even running on anything anymore.
They're not running on anything. And one of the things that the boomers did in the Democratic Party was they hoarded the power and didn't train the next generation and didn't start to spin off their power to that next generation. So there's just a bunch of geriatrics with very little in terms of next generation leadership coming up through the ranks. So they've kind of screwed themselves that way. My experience has been, because you asked about pendulum swing, that the pendulum is going to swing. That's just, it's going to go back and forth. The Democrats are kind of lost in the woods. They'll probably do okay in the midterm elections. That's, as a general rule, the president's party gets obliterated in midterm elections. I think Trump has done enough things that voters are going to want to punish him. So that'll probably come true this midterm, and he'll probably lose both houses. I wouldn't be shocked if he loses both houses. Having said that, I don't trust that the MAGA base has lost hope with Trump. He tried to overthrow the government, and they voted for him anyway. Like I don't think there's a bottom here. I don't think that, you wait for your alcoholic dad to hit bottom so that you can take him to rehab. I think he'll get out of rehab and keep drinking. Like I don't think this is the guy that's going to actually get out of this. To keep your dad thing going, just for the record.
I like it. Yeah.
I actually think he's poisoning mom by putting like antifreeze in her food, and she's getting sicker and sicker, and nobody knows why. And he's actually collecting. He's got a giant life insurance policy on her, and he's just waiting for her to cash out. That's where I think things are, and I don't think the Democrats realize that, or maybe they do. Biden had one job for 4 years, and that was to prevent Trump from being reelected, and he couldn't do it. And you think how
and not aid and abetting a genocide either. Just don't aid and abet a genocide. You're good. That's all I had to do is not fund a genocide.
I don't actually think that's true. I think he could have got up and said what Israel is doing is awful, and we would still end up with Trump. I don't think there was a formula for Biden to stop Trump other than Biden would have had to have been a different person. Like I think he just didn't have it. And then obviously he shouldn't have run in the primaries so that he could have cleared the way for somebody else to come in. Like he should have understood he was just there for a 4-year term. And I think he got carried away and thought, I have 6 brain cells left, I'll be fine. I want to tell a story. And the reason I want to tell this story is because I think this story helps a little bit. So there's a Polish-American sociologist named Jan Gross. And he's one of my heroes because I love his work. But having said that, things go very badly because of his work. So he wrote a book called Neighbors, and it was published in 2000. And the reason he wrote the book was, he said, there's this thing that Poland isn't dealing with, and we need to come to terms with it. And we need to just bring it out in the open so that everybody can get past it. This is a chance for us to heal. And in 2000, it was basically 55 years since World War II ended. And, the fall of the Iron Curtain was 10 years in the background. And so he's thinking we're mature enough, the things are developed enough that we can have this conversation finally. And he focuses on Yad Vabna, but it's not the only place where this took place. What happened was when the Nazis were conquering Poland, when they would show up, right, a lot of the Jewish population would escape. They would be hidden by people. So the Nazis had a hard time, the Einsatzgruppen, the guys that would come behind the army to murder the Jewish population, had a hard time getting to them. When they get to this one town called Yad Vabna, they find all the Jews are in a barn because the Catholic Polish population separated them out, stuck them in a barn, and then told the SS Einsatzgruppen, hey, they're right there, just go kill them, we don't care. And so Jan Gross is like, okay, at some point, Poland's going to have to come to terms with, there were a lot of Poles who did a lot of ugly, evil stuff. So he writes this book. His goal in writing this book isn't to hurt anybody. It's not to indict anybody. He doesn't want any trials. He wants, like, truth and reconciliation to move on to the next step to get past this event. Now, he has a personal stake in this. His mother was a Catholic Pole who was a resistance fighter who was running around in Poland murdering Nazis. And in the process, she fell in love with a Jewish man, married him, but then he dies. Then a little bit later, she falls in love with a second Jewish man and marries him. That's Jan Gross's dad. So he's like the product of the resistance against the Nazis, but at the same time, he's also the product of, the victimized Jewish Polish population. So he's also sorting through his own personal stuff in this. And his mother is an incredible person like that. That must have been an amazing role model for him. And so he publishes this book, Poland's Reaction. They went flying to the right. The Law and Justice Party is created by the Kaczynski brothers. They start talking about how they want to kill women's rights, get rid of abortion. They don't want gays anymore. They want to kill immigration. They're talking about how maybe Russia isn't that bad and maybe we shouldn't be so close to Germany and Western Europe. There's this massive pendulum swing that went in the complete opposite direction Jan Gross was hoping it was going to go in. Instead of the Polish people going, oh my God, you're right, this is awful, I can't believe this happened. Thank you for publishing this. Now we can heal on it and move on and put it in our past. They went, this didn't happen. You're a hateful person, and we need to destroy everybody who thinks like you. And unfortunately, I tell the story about Poland. Unfortunately, this is one of the big problems in the United States. There's a huge portion of the U.S. population that doesn't want to hear that we were the bad guy in Iraq, that doesn't want to hear that we were the bad guy in Vietnam, that doesn't want to hear that we were the bad guy with the Native Americans. And so as a person who's spent my life criticizing the U.S., I'm now stuck confronting the fact that the American population just isn't interested in having this analysis and talking about how workers in the United States have just been trashed upon for its entire existence, that this is an anti-labor, this is a capitalist state that's ruthless, like especially when you compare it to Europe, like compared to even the UK, which is like the guy in Europe. Like they at least do some measure of taking care of the working class. The TPP, Bernie was like, I'm against the TPP. Trump's, I'm against the TPP. And then Hillary was forced to change her position right after Obama had done the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. And they're going to dump it. That was like one of the main themes in the 2016 election. The reason why Bernie was against it was it created no safeguards for labor. It was this pure capitalist corporate wet dream. We're going to go in and we're just going to plunder. And so Bernie was against it. Who knows what was going through Trump's walnut-sized brain, why he was against it. Hillary thought, the American public is now against it because of Bernie. I might as well be against it to get elected. So she switches her position. Well, Trump gets elected. He pulls us out of the TPP. The TPP members renegotiated the deal and put in all these labor safeguards and created a really good, it's not great, but it's good. I give it a B or maybe even a B minus. Trade policy that actually has some safeguards. In other words, we were the problem. We were the reason why there were no labor safeguards. They had to rename it. They added 2 extra letters to the front of the TPP, but it's the same capitalist trade policy, but with some labor safeguards stuck into it. And so the irony of ironies is That's who we are. We're that guy. And how do you get the American public to go, okay, we need to heal on this. We need to have this conversation, and we need to get this out in the open instead of, well, you're being mean. You're calling me names.
You brought up a good point about this amnesia that Americans have. That is one of our greatest weaknesses, is our amnesia to what has happened in the past. Like you said, we got a president who comes in, does horrible shit, and then the next president comes in and he's presented as the answer to that, and then he lets us down, and then we keep hoping that there's going to be a Messiah that's going to come down from heaven and be the guy, and then we have complete amnesia over how we behaved during the Bush administration. So we're seeing this now with Iran, and this is but Serene, I want to give you a chance to address.
No, I was just saying that. What was I saying? There's this divide between. I lost my train of thought. It was something about like the left and the right. Let's see if I can remember what I was going to say.
It's all right. I lose my train of thought every time we're talking. So I'm like, shit.
What was the last thing?
I gotta start writing something down.
What was the last thing Roy said? Because it had to do with that.
I don't remember the last thing.
Dude, wait. Oh, that thing, Serene. Oh, that thing that he said.
It's okay. You can keep going. It wasn't like a big point. It was just like just adding on to what he said. It's okay.
I feel you. I know exactly. I totally understand what you're going through right now, Serene.
That we were the guys holding the labor stuff back from the TPP. So as soon as we left, they went in and put the labor stuff into it.
Oh, okay, I remember now. So yeah, I was just saying that there is this big divide, even like on social media, of the ones who are waking up and want to have these conversations of we are the bad guys, and you're even seeing some folks from MAGA doing that, joining this, I guess, what you would call more progressive side, versus the ones who are really, really in denial. And that's really what we're dealing with, is just these two sides. I don't know what the ratio is, who's more than the other, but and that's why I keep saying that side, the conservative, that Republican base, that's the main culprit, because they're the ones maintaining this. And then the ones on the other side are like, well, we can't keep voting for this. And then you have the liberals in the middle that are like, well, we don't want to address the real issues either, like genocide, like Cop City, like destruction of the working class, but we just don't want that. So they're just like all these separate groups that we're dealing with at the moment. And that's all I wanted to add on, is you do have the amnesia group, but the good news is I am seeing, it definitely gives me some hope. I am seeing that side that is having these conversations, especially on social media, and when waking up a lot of people along the way, people who I've never considered would have some of these conversations. And you have even people like asking AI questions, like what has happened in the past, what does a revolution look like, or how have we been tricked by our government? So there's all these different things happening. But there's definitely that divide where we are, which is probably what's going to make it really hard for us to pull like class consciousness. But I think we're getting there, slowly and surely.
I think Roy suffers from one problem. Roy, I'm going to critique you for a second, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Your biggest problem is that you don't realize the impact that you have had on American society through your viral videos. I think that you are very pessimistic, and I think it's because you are not seeing your own shit going viral and people waking up based on the stuff that you've said. Because what you've done is, and I know it's hard for you to see this because you're over there and you're not like seeing yourself being spread around the internet, but you're everywhere. I found out about you, and what's funny about you is that the funny thing about you is that nobody remembers your name. But I'm sorry, I don't mean that in a bad name. In a bad way. Like I saw you like 1,000 times come across my For You page, and I tried to commit your name to memory. I forgot it, and I'm like, who was that guy? Dude, he said something so amazing. And then I found you, saw your name, forgot again. And then I have the same experience with other people. I'm like, do you know who Roy Casagranda is? They're like, no. No, it doesn't sound familiar. I'm like, this guy. Oh yeah, I love him. He's so cool. And I'm like, dude, the impact that you've had on society. And I'm telling you, I have shown your videos to conservative friends, MAGA friends, and they've literally said, I love you. I love that guy. Literally, I have MAGA friends saying that. So believe it or not, you have infected not only like the left, but you've also permeated on the right wing, and they are waking up to certain concepts about class consciousness that they would have never had they not seen your video come across their For You page. So that's your problem, Roy.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I have definitely had people come up to me and go, "Oh, you're the YouTube professor," or something to that effect. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." I don't remember your name.
On your own is YouTube, or do you actually have a like Instagram page?
I do actually have an Instagram page.
Okay.
I'm a terrible social media person, so
that explains it. That's it. That explains it. You're not a social media person, but your shit goes viral, and you're just like some ghost phantom out there, some Jedi master that appears and then disappears, and then it's crazy. But yeah, sorry.
No, I feel flattered, and I don't actually get it. Like, I don't know why anybody watches my stuff, so I'm just gonna keep producing because you guys clearly like it, but I don't get it.
I actually think it's kind of cool that like you're not like a social media guy. You literally are like a Jedi who's going into the Force and then coming back into people's lives, and nobody knows where you are. Like, is he on some mountain somewhere meditating in like a temple? Like, where is this Jedi master? Where can we find him? That's how you are. You become like this enigma in our society, and I know you don't realize it. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm really not overblowing things. It's interesting to see this, but. Okay, so we're gonna get into geopolitics, and this is where you are going to explode with your knowledge and unleashing it to us. So, but before I get there, I want to frame this and present this in the context of propaganda. Propaganda comes in many forms. It can be very overt and obvious and cartoonish, but it also can be very sly and neoliberal. It can be a very seductive thing that can be done. And we are seeing all versions of this spectrum of propaganda trying to manufacture consent for war and aggression with Iran, right? Now, but before we get there, we have to talk about Gaza, because they are already trying to present this method of amnesia that you have talked about the genocide in Gaza already, because of the headlines of Iran, because of the horrors that are happening here at home with ICE. Gaza is off my For You page. It's not there anymore. We are already being conditioned to forget about a fucking genocide that people are estimating might have reached the 400,000 people may have died as a result of this genocide. So this is one of the most disgusting neoliberal videos of propaganda that I want to play here real quick. And I warn you, those of you with trigger warnings who need a trigger warning, this is the most disgusting form of neoliberal propaganda to actually just help us get over what's happened and what has happened in Gaza. Here we go. Get ready.
The year 2048 to show you the future I imagine for Israel and Palestine.
It's 2048. They don't launch rockets. They launch satellites. They don't dig tunnels. They build hotels. And for the first time in generations, people give peace a chance between Israel and Palestine.
This was a dream before, now it's reality.
Signed, recognized by the world. Even the Pope cried,
This is too good, too good.
Finally, 2 states for 2 people. Then more states joined. Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Yemen, and Iran.
It's been a long time coming.
But we made it.
Muslim tourists book their flights. They come for a run in Tel Aviv. They pray in Al-Aqsa Mosque and stay in hotels in Gaza. Jews and Muslims marry, and the mothers Approve.
Well, at least the kids will be Jewish, right?
The Mossad is out of business, so it opens a museum.
This was used many years ago, but no one needs to use it now.
And yet, the protests remain.
This is not what we want!
It's not peace.
It will not last!
Smaller and more irrelevant than ever. In 2048, the land didn't change, but the people did.
You want some?
Thank you.
This sounds like a dream only possible to imagine with AI.
But it doesn't have to be.
Remember, if you will it, it is no dream.
I want to grab a can of gasoline and set myself on fire right now.
This is my first time seeing this. I wish you would have.
Yeah, I've never seen this before.
You were gonna play this. What?
So what's the catalyst that creates this piece? I can't wait. Let's do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it really that easy? Holy shit, we're on our way.
All we have to do is what? I don't know what the what was. What was what happened?
Do y'all like, I cannot emphasize how evil that video was. It is more evil than Lindsey Graham going up and saying, hey, we need to get rid of all the Palestinians. Like, it's more evil than that, because literally they're trying, like the hotels. So they're, and this is what a question I have for you, Roy, how they equivocate modernization with civilization. Modernization is they're saying, oh, look, we're going to have pretty hotels, and therefore that means it's a peaceful society. They're equivocating advanced technology and growth with a healthy civilization. They're completely saying, look, it's okay that we're going to be building these sophisticated, beautiful hotels that Muslims can go to on the bones of thousands of fucking kids. It's completely okay, because look, it's going to be a fancy hotel. It's the most sociopathic evil shit I've ever seen in my entire life. And I stumbled upon that last night, and I had to bring it up to you, because you got to help me through this, Roy. Like, I need your help here.
So, I mean, the two-state solution isn't the solution, obviously, for so many reasons. You know, the land of Palestine was divided in 1948. The Israelis got 78% through warfare, through conquest. The UN had given them 55% on paper, but then they took an extra 23%. So that left the Palestinians 22%. But then over the decades since the 67 war, Israel has been carving off piece after piece after piece of the West Bank. If you look at a map of the West Bank and the chunks that are still Palestinian, that map isn't like a map of a thing that can become a state. That map looks like a skin rash. It's little pockets of Palestinians who are completely walled off from each other. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at the road network to travel the distance north to south in the West Bank, and you realize all the checkpoints the Palestinians have to go through, because the Israelis have their own private freeways that they take, so they can just zip back and forth across the West Bank. But the Palestinians have to go through all the Israeli checkpoints. It'll take you hours to just go from the north to the south, even though it's a tiny space, right? We're not talking about a big piece of land. So there is no two-state solution that's viable in any way, shape, or form. As it is, we actually already have the two-state solution. The Palestinian Authority, for the West Bank anyway, pretends that it is an actual governmental organization. So like, if let's say you're in Jordan and you're going into the West Bank, so you're going to go to a border crossing. So there's a Palestinian flag on the building, there's a Palestinian in a uniform, and you hand the passport to the Palestinian. The Palestinian takes the passport and sticks it in a tray behind them, and there's a mirror behind them. It's a one-way mirror. There's an Israeli on the other side. He takes your passport, runs it through the Israeli machine to determine whether or not you can enter Palestine, and then gives the passport back to the, I don't know what to call the guy, the actor that's in front of you, to make you think that there's a Palestinian Authority. So at the end of the day, what the Palestinian Authority is sort of turned into is they're like in the Nazi concentration camp system, they're like the capos, the Jews that are working for the Nazis to help keep the thing in order. And it's a tragedy and it's a shame, but that's not a formula for a two-state solution. The only solution is a one-state solution. and that's where you create a single secular state with right of return for the Palestinian population. I don't know how we get there. I don't know how we get to that point if the United States is going to never hold the Israelis accountable for the crimes against humanity and war crimes that they continually do. Like, what country on earth gets to bomb its neighbors relentlessly and nobody does anything about it? Nobody says anything about it. it's amazing.
What country gets a blank check from the United States where literally their entire economy is held up by U.S. taxpayer money? Like, they are a welfare state.
Yeah.
It's funny how conservatives talk about welfare, like welfare state. Israel is a welfare state. It's living off of our tax money. That's just lazy ass people, white people living on a free paycheck from the U.S. government, and to fuck up brown people.
They work really hard to do what they've done to Palestine.
That's true.
They might be getting free money from us, but they're still very hard workers.
So Serene, you're Palestinian. How does that video make you feel? I cannot imagine what is going through you right now, but I need to know.
Oh man. It's the lack of accountability, right? And it's also that little sneaky way of blaming the lack of peace on Palestinians, especially with that line, instead of building tunnels, we're launching rockets. Like, excuse me? Like, we're not going to talk about the occupation in the West Bank. We're not going to talk about the genocide happening. Like, how do we get here? Like Roy said, those things have to stop first. It's not about the tunnels. It's about, oh man.
Here's a thought. First, stop shooting babies. Step one. Step two, get the fuck out of somebody else's territory. Like, that's my opinion.
War crime, stop violating international law. Like, these are the first things. None of that is mentioned. We completely gloss over that and focus on the tunnels and, the protesters, the pro-Palestinian protesters complaining, no justice, no peace. Like, framing was insane. I just couldn't believe what I was watching.
Also, I don't care how nice your hotel is that caters only to the extremely rich, like $1,000 a night rooms, I'm assuming are the cheap ones. If the Israelis are dropping missiles on it, it's gonna not be a great hotel.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the fact that it's a genocide site. And I can't even think, like, who in their right mind will want to build a resort on top of, just the negative energy alone from that section of the planet Earth would, absolutely turn me off. But yeah, that's
evangelical Karens. Evangelical Karens. I cannot wait to book a ticket to the Holy Land and live in that Gaza. Now that they got rid of them terrorists out there, it's God's land now. I could totally see them booking a ticket there.
And the fact that Nasser is Palestinian, calls himself Arab Israeli. That's the term. Doing this is just even more demonic to me. Like, they're using him. It's, again, there's identity politics going on over there too. Like, oh look, we're using a Muslim to send out this message to you guys. Wow. I wish I had watched this before the show so I'd have more things to say. I'm just like flabbergasted right now.
I know.
What's happening in 23 years? I'm confused. Like, what's this timeline here?
Was it 2048?
Yeah,
100 years.
2048.
100 years after 1940. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, you got it. Jesus, that makes it so much worse. Oh my God.
It's a horror show, like what that was. But what I want to focus on with that video is, Roy, there are so many elements of propaganda in that video that have historical precedent. Yeah, sorry, go.
No, I'm sorry. It just popped into my head. So I can see the video now. In 2039, the Nazis have won World War II, and they have a Polish guy talking about how amazing the new Poland is.
That oh God, I didn't even think about that. Holy shit. Like, what if this was an alternative reality where the Nazis won and like the French stopped resisting?
It's just a matter of imagining this new Poland where
if only the French could just stop resisting and stop blowing up our trains.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, Okay, so the elements of propaganda in this video have historical precedence. This is not this video just pop out of somebody's ass. This is a very keen, cunning, sly method that has been cultivated over the years. This time with the apex of AI. Like, this is the first major rollout of AI that we're seeing in this past week. We have AI videos that are completely automated now. This is where we are seeing we're at a moment of history where pro-war imperialist propaganda is being rolled out with a completely new format, but it has a historical pretext to it. Can we go into that, Roy, about that? Like, what built up to this type of propaganda?
Well, propaganda has been around since the beginning, right? Like the first time a pharaoh of Egypt lied to his people about some dream he had about interaction with the god and tried to talk them into doing something that maybe wasn't in their best interest. So this is nothing new. As soon as we were a political animal, we were doing something, right? I can even see a gathering and hunting band, and there's like a little bit of politics going on, and people are manipulating each other. The kind of propaganda that we're seeing now really became extremely sophisticated in the 19th and 20th centuries because it needed to if you're going to run an electoral republic, right? Because how do you talk people into voting against their own best interests? How do I manipulate people into believing the big lie, as Hitler put it in Mein Kampf? And so there have been lots of little techniques. So since I brought up Hitler, because he has to be brought up at some point in every conversation, what he said was, if you take an outrageous lie and you say it and then repeat it, people will believe it, A, because it's so outrageous it must be true, and then B, because you've said it so many times it starts to sink into their brain. That's one method. Another method was actually created much more recently, and it's been used widely by Putin. And that method is to basically sow chaos by creating a system where you've got your hand in everything. So about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more, 22 years ago, they came up with this idea that they would fund everybody. So they would fund the neo-Nazis, they would fund the communists, they would fund the liberals, they'd fund the anarchists. They didn't care what your ideology was. They would fund the pro-abortion people, the anti-abortion people. They would fund the gay rights people, the anti-gay rights people. They sent money in every direction. And in the process, they had effectively an agent in every organization. And then what they did was they, at some point, revealed, oh yeah, we sent that guy millions of dollars. We sent that organization millions of dollars. All of a sudden, nobody could trust any of the organizations, right? So there's lots of techniques that you can do. Each one has its own positive and its own negative. But when you think about that one was a particularly impressive one, because what you did was you discredited everybody. The only thing left in that moment is the state, right? Because you've just said, yeah, we own the communists and the anarchists and the fascists and the conservatives and the liberals. And then, if you're a person that had an ideology, where do you go? One of the big traps of the last 200 years, of course, is also ideology, because ideology is an oversimplification of the world around us. I'm not saying I don't have an ideology. I'm just saying this is what it is. And the result is, if you can focus on that ideology and keep hammering away at it, you can get people to do things that contradict their own belief system. I had a student who was pro-Trump 2016. I had him in fall. So the election happens. Trump obviously won. And then in January, or it might have been February, the student came to my office. So it was probably February. And I said, okay, so how do you feel so far? He goes, oh my God, he's a blithering idiot. And I'm like, oh, I'm shocked you're saying that. He goes, yeah, he's terrible. He's a disaster. And I go, he hasn't even been president for a month. It's been like 3 weeks or whatever it was. And he's like, yeah. And he's made one awful decision after the other. And I go, okay, does this mean you regret your vote? He goes, oh no, I love it. It was a good vote. And I went, wait a minute, if he's a bad president, doesn't that mean he's going to harm America? He goes, oh yeah, he's definitely going to harm America. And I went, but isn't one of the reasons you voted for him because you're a conservative and you're really super patriotic and you love America? He goes, I do love America, but I really want him to harm America. And I'm confused. Like I'm in loop-de-loop land trying to understand what's happening. Because I thought he was going to come in and say, yeah, I can't believe how amazing of a president he is. You must feel like an idiot for not voting for him. And instead he's like, no, this guy's a disaster. So then I go, well, if he's harming America, you're in America, then that means he's harming you. And he goes, I don't care. I want him to hurt all of us because every day he hurts, he's hurting liberals.
That's
interesting.
And then I went, wait a minute.
Wow.
So you're on a ship, it's sinking. You're happy it's sinking because you hate half the passengers and you want them to drown. And he's like, yeah, basically.
Drowning with it.
Okay.
Huh. Yeah.
How do you get a person there?
Yeah.
What was that happened to this guy? You want to hug him and say, dude, it's going to be okay.
Now, for me, I want to empathize for a second. Where I'm at is I want the most. Hold on. It's gonna make sense here. Okay, I promise. I want the hardcore SS division of MAGA, and I want the liberals who are apologizing for genocide and all the oppression that is done to all of us, the working class. Get them on a boat, have that sink, and then have all the rest of us just safe on land. We're having a good time. We're developing an egalitarian society. We're all fed. We confiscate the means for production, and everybody's taken care of. That's what I want. So how do we get there, Roy?
We'll build a giant, amazing resort hotel in Gaza and give everybody a free night stay. And let the Israelis do their work.
And we'll give Hamas whatever it needs to just do its thing to that hotel. And then we'll just be like...
Israelis will do
it. I'm glad that, Roy, you brought up like the agents that were infiltrating all these different organizations. Because one of the questions I had on here is, what should we look out for today as far as PSYOPs or as far as, these types of agent activities that are infiltrating even our organizations or our communities?
What was that?
If you know of any of these tactics that are happening today.
So I'm not sure that I'm up to date on tactics that are happening today. I can definitely talk about what's happened in the past.
Of course.
United States, of course, did COINTELPRO during the 1960s counterintelligence program. And we put FBI agents inside organizations and then use those FBI agents to spread disinformation. On one occasion, to drug the food that was being eaten at basically a Black Panther commune, and then that way assassins could enter into the compound and shoot to death Fred Hampton. And then in Houston and Dallas, they got the Black Panther members they were writing fake letters back and forth to each other, calling each other names, until finally the Dallas Black Panther guy drove to Houston and shot and murdered Chris Hampton, not related as far as I know to Fred Hampton. But there's this pattern. Tupac's Afeni Shakur, I couldn't remember Afeni. Afeni Shakur was the New York Black Panther member, and her group of Black Panthers, the FBI agent said we should bomb a building, because the Weather Underground was doing the bombing campaign, and he was like, we should do it too. And they were against it. They were like, dude, this is stupid. Why would we bomb a building? We don't think that the Weather Underground is doing something rational. And he just kept bringing it up. And he finally talked them into it with the guarantee that they wouldn't actually set the bomb off in a way that would kill anybody. But a group of them were still against it. Anyway, they then used that to entrap them and then brought it to court. And Afeni Shakur, representing herself in the courtroom, proved that he was an FBI agent doing entrapment and got the Black Panthers off. So there's that history. In Austin, Texas, I can't remember the year. It was definitely around 20 years ago, but I feel like it was less than 20 years ago. A very similar thing happened where there was a guy who entered into an organization and then took it in a direction where he talked them into, he talked two of the people into doing a violent act. And in the end, he was exposed, but it screwed up the lives of those two people for years. And of course, it discredited the organization that was involved. So that, I mean, 20 years just isn't that long ago. I don't even think it was 20 years ago, 18 years ago. So there is this track record of the United States doing this. I also think that the United States has the track record of rich people funding organizations. So right after Obama was elected, of course, the birther movement came about, but also the Tea Party movement. And the Tea Party movement was very heavily funded by the rich. And one of the things that happened was a lot of anarchists got sucked into the Tea Party movement because of the way they were doing the propaganda around it and making it sound like it was an anarchist or a libertarian dream, or that was the goal, when the reality was, cut taxes for the rich. They never cared about anything other than that. I mean, especially when you looked at the tax cuts that Obama had proposed, right? The middle class and the upper middle class would have benefited more under Obama's tax cuts than McCain's tax cuts. So the rich were the guys who were going to pay under Obama's tax cuts. McCain's tax cuts were great for the rich. So it was really weird to have an anti-tax protest after Obama was elected, when the majority of the people protesting were people who were benefiting better than if McCain had been elected. And that was the kind of propaganda that they pulled off. And of course, the whole birther movement. Now we have a Supreme Court that's rogue, that's basically giving the president monarchical power. And
yep. And what's interesting about that, with this full-on imperial powers that they're giving Trump, that MAGA is not even because I'm going to put my shoes in MAGA for a second. I'm going to pretend I'm a Republican and I'm American first, and I still believe that Orange Daddy is going to come and save us and give me more freedom and more money somehow. Let's say I'm that guy. Okay, so under that logic, though, now that SCOTUS has given POTUS imperial powers, are they not thinking ahead? If I'm afraid that Democrats are going to have authoritarian power, do they not realize that if some authoritarian Democrat comes into power, that they're going to use that power against them? Is that not in their foresight? Because, okay, they're thinking that Trump is never going to die. He's going to maintain power like a dictator, and he's just going to be some transhuman who's going to live forever, and there's no danger of Democrats taking over. I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a Republican for a second, who only thinks that the Democrats are the enemy. Not that both parties are the fucking enemy, but it's the Democrats. If I'm in that duopolistic thinking, is there never any foresight with MAGA? They never, because the Bush administration, the people who supported Bush, never thought that Obama could use the Patriot Act against them with people who are, say, constitutionalist preppers. You see what I'm saying? Nobody foresees the other side of using the power that they're giving their team. And that's me stepping inside the duopolistic realm, even though I'm an anarchist and I hate both fucking sides. I'm just trying to grapple it,
I don't know. I want to give MAGA a little bit of credit because, if you look at them on X, they're all very confused by, just the last week. What has happened? We're not doing anything with Iran. It's not a regime change. And then, we had a great success with the attacks. And then whatever happened with, with Bibi, where Trump was dropping F-bombs. And then after, it's, oh, we have to drop the witch hunt on Bibi because he's a great leader, and we can't do this. You Israelis can't prosecute this leader. So there's this emotional instability that's being observed. I think even MAGA is like, okay, like, we love you, but what is going on? Like, you.
We're seeing a disillusionment happen.
It's just
Yeah, my neck hurts.
Today we have powers. What? You know, like, can we even trust a person this emotionally unstable to have these powers? And I think they're having that conversations, even like the most, you know, gung ho of MAGA. But of course, there's always that population that's just absolutely not thinking at all. It's like, yeah, he's always right.
So he said he was going to do tariffs about 200 times during his campaign. So when he did the tariffs and people were like, what? What is this? You're like, dude, were you not listening? What? What? Do you need hearing aids? What is this? What is this? And I don't get it. That was actually what happened in 1932. There were a bunch of people who either voted for Hitler or who you know, abstained or stayed out of it, thinking, well, Hitler won't do what he said he was going to do, and then he got into power and did what he said he was going to do. I also think Trump's incoherence has been around since 2015. Like, yes, when he's talking about the flagpole, you're listening, thinking, oh my God, what the hell has happened to this man's brain? But then you go look at a video of him talking in a campaign in 2016, and you're like, he was always like this. This is so there's nothing has changed. I don't get
tremendous.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Like, you know, at one point there's this sentence he does. It's a run-on sentence that goes on, and he starts talking about how he has a big brain, and his uncle was a professor at MIT, and he talked about nuclear power, and who thought nuclear power would ever be? And you're like, dude, what the hell? Everybody thought nuclear power was going to be amazing after we dropped 2 A-bombs on Japan. Like, what are you talking about? Anybody who watched the news knew. And you think, oh, what is going through the brain that you got here? I don't get it. But you're right. Trump said, if you vote for me this election, you won't ever have to vote again. And I think there's a cadre of MAGA people who think he's somehow going to fix it so that the Democrats will never be elected again. He is passive for everything. And this is the end. So there might still be elections, but it'll always be a republic.
It's kind of like they think that this is going to be the second coming soon. So it's like, you don't have to worry. This is going to be done. We don't have to worry about elections after this. There
is a book that says that for sale on Amazon, that he is the second coming.
No way. Okay, I got to check that out, man. I am tagging that book in the description.
I don't know how well it's selling, but I did see it pop up. And
that is insane. So, okay, Roy, I want to get to, like, okay, let's just say, I'm just hypothetically, Roy, let's say that MAGA does get completely disillusioned and disaffected with their Messiah. Let's say that the illusion of Trump being their Messiah completely falls. Let's say that let's just be optimistic here for a second, okay? And let's say that the right-wing working class that thought that Trump was going to save America and put America first and help their lives and help them get wealthy and prosperous. Let's say that all that falls apart. And now they are completely politically homeless. Like, they have nowhere to go. They can't go to Democrats because they've been shitting on the Democrats. And to my gratitude, I hope they don't go over to the Democrats. And let's say that Democrats, a lot of people in the Democratic Party have the same kind of transformation, the same disillusionment. They said, you know what, fuck the Democratic Party. They're not doing anything to stop Trump. They funded a genocide. I'm done with the Democratic Party. So now you have this group of Americans who are politically homeless. They're completely done with the duopoly, and this grows. And again, this is hypothetical. I'm being optimistic, but let's just say that is the scenario. What then? What's the next step of the empire? How will they handle this new demographic and this growing population of people who say fuck you to both of them? How does that work?
Well, historically, we have a two-party system because we have single-member district representation. And the way our elections roll out, let's imagine you have 3 political parties, and let's say one of them has 45% support, one of them has 35% support, and one of them has 20% support. And we'll put them on a left-right continuum, and I don't care which one you put on the left and the right, but A is on party A with 45% is on one end, party C with 20% is on the other end, and in the middle is party B with 35%. If the people who like party C, who are part of party C, who have that ideology, vote for their candidate, they vote for party C, party A, which is the opposite side of the political spectrum, that guy wins with that 45%. But if the people in party C vote for party B, which is the lesser of the two evils, B wins with 55%. And that's a lesson that we have to learn every generation, because the third party candidate is going to jump in the race approximately every generation. Anderson in 80, Buchanan and Perot and Nader in the late 90s, right? So, well, 92, I guess, for the first time, then 96, and then 2000. Periodically, we have to just relearn this, and then people go, oh, that sucked. I basically helped the other guy that I hated even more get elected. I need to go vote for the lesser of two evils. The only way you could get around that is if you had a mass movement. That did happen. It was called 1860. A bunch of Whigs dumped the Whig Party and ran over and voted for the Republican Party. And that's the only time in US history where a main party was replaced and defeated by a third party, because the Republican Party was a third party. And then the Whig Party just fizzled out of existence. If you had a large scale movement like that, you could pull this off. If you don't, you're just going to keep teaching the lesson. You have to vote for the lesser of the two evils. Having said that, my assumption would be that you would now have a new political party with great ideology and wonderful rhetoric, and it's saying everything you want it to, but the corporations and the rich are still funding it, and they're going to slowly ease it back to where the Democrats or the Republicans were, and you'll not have changed anything. I mean, I think that's what people thought.
That's kind of that thing that the last thing you said is exactly what I'm getting at. And this leads us to a more extreme. We're gonna have to take this to more extremes here, beyond electoral politics. And in that sense, that's what I would read their next move is going to be. If we come to that, where we have this new, where people are completely disillusioned, almost pretty much, like not to say 80% of Americans are completely done with Republicans and Democrats, except your neoliberal elitists and your neocon elitists, and you just have working class people who are done with the duopoly. They will present a third option for them, but that is also going to be co-opted by the big corporations. So this leads me to the next more extremity here. What about revolution? Like, is it possible in this, at some point in this late stage of capitalism and fall of empire, that the American people could unite in a very rebellious front, a hardcore rebellious front, to the point where they want all of the people who are currently in power, including the corporations, to be completely dismantled? Is it possible? And if it's not that possible, what would it take to get there to make it possible?
Okay, so first, before we go any further, I want to just do definitions of terms, because people, when you say the word revolution, I think there are 10,000 different things pop up into people's minds. So by definition, a revolution is when it's the civilians versus the government, and it doesn't have to be violent. It can be a non-violent event. A civil war is when you field two armies in the field and they shoot at each other and they're killing each other. So the American Revolution started as a revolution. It was a series of protest movements, by the way, not against taxes, but they were protesting because they wanted a representation in Parliament that the English Bill of Rights guaranteed them if they were being hit with taxes. So they wanted the taxes because they wanted the representation in Parliament. That's one of the ways in which Americans have gotten things confused. And here, I'll even prove it to you in a really strange way. The Boston Tea Party happened not because they made a tea tax, There already was a tea tax. The Boston Tea Party happened because the English lowered the tax rate on tea. And the people who wanted representation in Parliament feared it would encourage people to go drink more tea. So their protest was for the lower taxes, right? So if they were against taxes, they should have been thrilled, not dumping the tea in the harbor. That was a revolution, those protests.
Yeah.
Those protests ended the revolution on April 19, 1775 at the battles of Concord and Lexington, because at that moment then, the American Revolution turned into a civil war. Because at that moment then, there's a United States Army shooting at the British Army. Mm-hmm. So, the Russian Revolution was a revolution because it was civilians versus the government. The French Revolution was a revolution because it was civilians versus the government. The American Revolution started as a revolution and then devolved into a civil war. And I just want to make sure we're clear about the differences. So if you're talking about revolution, we've only had 2 revolutions in the United States. The first one that then devolved into a civil war in the 1960s. The 1960s, by definition, by the way, the 1960s started in like 1954. So the 1960s included half of the 50s. That 15 or so year span of time was a true revolution in all sorts of different ways. It was a cultural revolution. It was a political revolution. It was class warfare. It was a perfect storm of 3 forces coming together at the same time: civil rights, class warfare, and the student movements. And that convergence, like the labor movement, the religious left, because that's what used to exist in the United States. A bunch of evangelical Christians believed Jesus was a socialist, so that they believed they needed to move the United States to the left because he cared about the poor. And he thought there was no chance in hell that the rich could get to heaven. So they were like, clearly he didn't like capitalism. And then the student movement, and that revolution had enormous impact on the United States. It pushed the United States in a completely different direction than it had been going in so many vectors. And then came the 70s pendulum swing backlash that Nixon tried to push. Reagan is the guy who pulls it off. Nixon is sort of the precursor attempt at this. That backlash then is one of the reasons why all those boomers go flying over and become Republicans, and they're part of the me generation, and they're voting to have their taxes cut, and they suddenly don't care about these other things that seem so valuable to them when they were college students. If we did have a revolution in the United States, there would have to have been some kind of consciousness event that got people into the streets in a coherent way, right? Mm-hmm. Occupy Wall Street wasn't coherent. It was a great attempt. It was an exciting event. I participated in to the extent to which I was organizing teach-ins at Occupy Austin, and it failed. And one of the reasons it failed was, and I would ask them, I would say, what's the political objective? They go, we're not doing politics. I'm like, dude, you're in the streets. This is a protest movement. You are acting politically. You're a human being. Human beings are political. You cannot not do politics. So what you need to do is you have to have a coherent message. And they would push back against me and they would say, no, it's precisely because we're not coherent that we're so inclusive. And I go, look at that. And I pointed to the street as the cars are driving by. And I go, do you know what that is? And they go, no, it's cars driving by. And I go, yeah, that's called failure. If you were succeeding, they would be stopping, getting out of their car and joining. What is the political message you need to say to them to get them out of their car? And by the way, that would create an amazing traffic jam too, which is another form of protest. And they refuse to have that conversation. And I think that's part of the problem. How do you get the American public to the point where it is having that conversation? Americans need to start to believe in doubt. I love doubt. Like doubt is one of my favorite things. I quadruple check things. I still get shit wrong. This universe is so hard to pin facts down. There's so much disinformation. I've recently been looking to see what AI's answers to searches I do are. It's wrong 95% of the time if you're just looking for facts on the stuff I've been searching. I'm blown away. Like, I'm thinking people are going to be running around getting the wrong answer. Like, recently I checked a country's citizenship law. Could you be a dual citizen in this country? And AI said yes. And I was like, I don't believe it. So I went and double checked it. But when I did the double check, I had changed the phrasing of my sentence slightly. I added an extra word. I don't even remember what I added. And the same AI bot said no, which, by the way, was the answer. And I'm thinking, wow, you changed your answer and you're the same AI bot. Like, how are people going to get accurate information in this new world? Which brings to the next point. When I was in the 90s, thinking about the internet, getting on it for the first time, no search engines, so you just randomly type in a URL and see if something popped up. And then the first engines come out and they had names like Metacrawler, and you'd hit enter and come back 30 minutes later to see if you got any results, because it had crawled like yeah. And I was thinking this could be the dawning of an age of information where all of a sudden there's this democratization. It's so much easier to get access to information. You don't have to get in your car and drive to the library and check out a book. You would have to know where to even search to figure out what book to check out. Internet, eventually you'll just be able to type in a question and it'll give you an answer. And I feel like at some level we've been so distracted by all these conspiracy theories and all this misinformation and all these algorithms that drive us into these tunnels that in a way we're dumber than we were 30 years ago. In a way we're smarter, but in a way we're dumber. And I'm like, why didn't we just get smarter? Why did we do the dumb part too? And that's my fear, that no matter what you do at this point, if you don't wake up doubt in people's hearts and minds, that you're going to end up back where you were. It's just a pendulum swing, and you're just going to swing back to the other spot, which maybe that's the best we can do. Maybe our species is stuck in struggle and we're trying to stop the pendulum swing, and then we're trying to ride it back, and then we're trying to, but it feels a little frustrating if that's really the best we can do.
Serene, I don't want to suck up the air here with my questions. I want to give you the floor on your questions about revolution with Doc.
Before I do that, I was just thinking about this whole AI thing. It's absolutely scary, but I also, just to be on the optimistic side, because I like doing that, I feel like it's a two-edged sword, right? So we are inundated with misinformation, and so many people are falling for it. But even now, and I was a victim of this. I used to look at some videos, read some captions, maybe double check it on the internet, be like, oh, okay, this is actually happening. But now there is just so many AI videos that even I have to start like, is this real? Is this real? So maybe eventually this is going to get people to, arouse that doubt. That
I hope so. That would be amazing.
I really hope so, because it's like, what can you believe anymore? And if people are not doing that, that's freaking scary. But I think it's going to get to a point where nobody is going to know what to believe, and it's going to something is going to click, and people are going to start really trying to fact check, because I don't even know how we actually can fact check, because like you said, there's the AI with Google that's lying, and AI really just scrubs the internet. You could be getting an answer from Reddit and Wikipedia and a book, all so that it's scary, because even if people do wake up that doubt, how do we even get to the real information? But
that's the problem, right? There's so much misinformation on the net, and the tragedy is, I think the biggest enemy of states going forward isn't the possibility of a revolution. I think it's really dumb voters. I think it's having really dumb citizens. And the irony is so many places on the planet have engineered their dumb citizens, but in the information age, I think that's going to backfire, and you're going to see state after state stuck in these really weird loops, especially the electoral republics, because they're the ones that are most vulnerable, where you're going to get these really awful electoral outcomes. the United States is sort of the bellwether in this. But I I'm worried about what happens to European republics as well. I'm worried about what happens to the stable ones. Like the Nazi parties and the coalition government in Sweden. By the way, they're called Sweden Democrats, just to confuse everybody.
Sounds about right. So, what we're seeing is kind of like I've been looking at this term, normalization through gradualization, where they like we look at Trump. And I was talking with Greg about this, about how I never, on my bingo card, I never had that literally the one to hail in an era of full-on authoritarianism would have been somebody who spoke at a 5th grade level. I thought it was going to be like a James Bond villain, sophisticated, charismatic, intelligent. I didn't. And then Trump comes along and is like, Trump comes along and says, freedom is gay. And then it's like, holy shit, now Americans just give away their freedoms, or like they're bad guys. We gotta have a police state. Yeah, let's give a police state. It's like, holy shit, was that all it took? It just needed somebody speaking at a 5th grade level, and I'm like, damn, I didn't have that on my bingo card. It was so. It was like I thought it was gonna be like somebody very benevolent and charismatic and sophisticated that was like, oh my gosh, he's so smart, I'll trust him with anything. No, it's just goddamn, I'm on board with that. He said the word bigly. I like bigly. I don't know. Blew my mind.
No, I'm with you. Like, I remember as a kid watching TV in the 70s, and it was always the smart people were always evil. And they were always conspiring to take over. And then the Bond movies, they're always the super villains of the Bond movies are always these like 200 IQ guys. And that's what I thought too. Like at some point there'd be this evil, and then next thing you know, it's like Trump.
The ruling class found the key to the American mind, and that is speaking in very elementary, punchy terms and be like a bully on a kindergarten playground. And it really strikes
mistake.
Huh?
The ruling class has made a terrible mistake.
What is that?
They think they can control Trump. And I don't think they can.
He's a wild card.
I don't know. I mean, the way I look at Trump is like I've always seen Trump in one lens, and I've never changed it since 2016. I've always seen him in this one way, and I never changed that. He is a reality TV star. That's it. I've never seen him as being like an autonomous dude. I've always seen him as just being, hey, read these lines, make them be that like punchy guy on the set and fire people, and then say grandiose things and brag and be egotistical. That's your character. Play it, Trump. Play it, you little bitch. And I think he did that well. Huh?
I think that's how he started, but I think the narcissism that he's always had, like he's always presented, has taken hold, and now he just thinks he's the second coming. And I don't think there's anybody who can stop him now, especially because the Supreme Court keeps making one awful ruling after the other. It's like they decided to kill the Republic once and for all. I mean, Trump v. United States 2024 has to be one of the worst rulings the world has ever seen. But the one that just happened too, you're like, what? Why are you doing this?
It keeps getting worse.
It's insane.
Anyway, I think they've made a big miscalculation, and one of the ways that I think it's kind of obvious how big this miscalculation was. I was at an event where there were a lot of CEOs. I won't out my event or anything, and for me, it's like I got to hear what they have to say because I'm interested. I want to know. I want to know what's going through their minds. One CEO after the other got up and said how, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but Elon is there, and whatever Elon wants, and I'm thinking to myself, dude, do you guys not know about the Night of the Long Knives? This is not going to last. At some point, Trump is going to get rid of the SA, and the SA in this scenario is Elon and all the tech bros. And of course, that he didn't kill them in the night with knives. I mean, there's some sadness for me as I say that, but he still fired Elon in the end, and he tanked the stock market, and then for like the first time in history, not only did the stock market go down, the bond market went down, right? Because normally the bond market goes up when the stock market goes down. He took both out at the same time. He was like, what the hell? This is Armageddon. And I think they don't realize what they've unleashed. And we've just seen the beginning. And it's just going to continue, especially now that the Supreme Court has defanged the courts. You wouldn't think the Supreme Court would defang its own court system. It's amazing.
I think it's all leading to what has always been the plan, is to bring us under an authoritarianism style of capitalism where we have less and less buffer zone between us and the wills of Wall Street. I mean, that's been my analysis in watching all this horror unfold. It's like, yeah, they're doing their playbook, and I don't know. I'm not surprised by it. I just never thought it would be so fucking cartoonish. I thought it was gonna be more of like a slow boil the frog type of situation. So, but
here's what I don't understand. One of the reasons why we wanted to have an electoral republic and dump the monarchy was because we wanted it so that the rich, when they got a guy in charge that they didn't like, could get rid of the guy. And so we phased it in so you can run every 4 years, and then that allows the rich to go fund the other candidate and take out the guy that they don't like. So in other words, it created a system where business elites were effectively in charge. And that was the 19th century, right? The 19th century, US presidents usually only served one term. And sometimes when they got a second term, they got shot to death. So it was really frowned upon to get that second term because we'll kill you. And so presidents were one term. Frequently, they were like just blatantly corrupt. You know, people are literally going in the White House with bags of money. We didn't have the Australian ballot, which is what we have now. So when you cast your vote, the whole world could go look to see how you voted. So your boss could literally tell you, I need you to vote Democrat. If you vote Republican, I'll fire you. Like that was the 19th century. We switched over to the 20th century. We cleaned up the store a little bit, right? We got the Australian ballot at the end of the 19th century. We got rid of some of the corruption. We created a professional bureaucracy. We made it difficult for the president to meddle too much in the bureaucracy so that the president wasn't bringing in their cronies and turning things over into favors. And, we had the FBI start to investigate politicians, and we had journalists doing investigation. And then the next thing you know, we have the 60s and there's the civil rights movement. There was this cleanup event. And the cleanup event created this facade, this illusion of, yeah, we're a democracy. It's all great. The rich made so much freaking money off of this. They became mindlessly rich. Why are they risking this? Why mess with this thing? They had the working class doing exactly what they wanted them to do. Work long hours, get bad pay, no socialized medicine, no maternity leave, shitty public schools. Like, why would they want to upend this? I don't get it. I think the rich have lost their freaking minds. I was pissed because I couldn't stand that the working class is being trashed and that we were still a racist, sexist society. I wanted to reform. I didn't want to murder the baby. I just wanted to teach the baby how to do the alphabet. Like, I don't understand why we're doing this. And I'm just bewildered. I don't get the path that we're on.
I have ideas, but yeah.
I don't think any of us really even just put ourselves in their minds, because it really doesn't make sense. It's like this extreme level of greed that, like, how much money do you need? Do you have enough to, like, literally pass down to like 10 generations down?
Yeah. Still wouldn't invent it.
Your whole lineage is going to be rich for life. Like, it's insane. How much more do you need? Or is it just, this very nihilistic I hate humans. I want them all to suffer kind of thing going on. Sociopathic. Like it's so hard to like just think about the type of people that are actually running things. It's terrifying what's going on in their minds.
I think we got a little glimpse of what goes on in their minds. And I think one of the best examples of that was Lex Wexner, who was the guy who handed over the keys to his corporation to Jeffrey Epstein and gave him complete power of attorney over the company. And he said this guy was insane, like mentally insane. And he claimed that he was possessed by a demon that made him constantly want more, where he would not be satisfied until he got more and more. That was a great little glimpse into the mind of these ultra wealthy, powerful elites. They are not mentally well. They have to constantly have more. And to them, it's just a numbers game. Just keep bumping it up. That was Jeffrey Epstein's godfather, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a numbers game, because think about it. Once you got to $10 million, why would you need another dollar? Like, what possibly... Yeah. What there's no happiness to be gained in the next $10 million. You've already, because you know money can't buy you happiness. It's not true. It's a curve, and it's a law of diminishing returns curve. So for a household in the United States, the first $100,000 does in fact buy you happiness. After that, there's no meaningful change to your happiness level. So if you made $100,000 a year as a household, you're in great shape. 120, you're not going to notice the difference. But if you were making 80, you would. And so the question that I have in my head is, you know, once you're in the millions, why are you wanting more? What are you gaining? And especially when you consider what it takes to be that rich. Money is representation of energy times time, right? It's the energy that I put through my blood, sweat, tears, ideas, exhaustion, and then per hour. So if I'm worth $1 billion, I've had to take, because I probably didn't actually earn $1 billion, right? Maybe I earned $10 million. I had to take $990 million from customers and workers to create that $1 billion worth of wealth. And so my hoarding that money is coming at the expense of the happiness of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And then, of course, it's terrible for the economy, because it's not like they're using the money, they're hoarding it. If they were taking the money and pumping it right back into the economy and expanding their growth and creating jobs, then yeah, do it. I mean, that was the idea behind having an upper class, was they would be the steering mechanism for the economy, and they would create businesses and corporations and buildings, and it would be great and glorious. And they don't. They buy 10 yachts and they put the rest in a bank, and they sit around and twiddle their thumbs and try to make more. And you're like, why?
And that's what gets me about capitalism and the whole stock market, is that it's not enough that you make $10 million a year, right? And you could be able to fund your rest of your life, and that's not good enough. We need to have profits for the shareholders every year. Year. It's this number obsession.
It's literally illegal for you as a CEO not to maximize profit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That started with the Dodge brothers and Ford, correct? Where Henry Ford wanted to give more of the profit shares to his employees and lower prices, and then the Dodge brothers sued him and said, no, you need to maximize profit for your shareholders and stop caring about your employees. Was that where that started? Like, I can't remember.
Like, how did we get here where, you know, it's not enough that businesses are wildly successful. You can't just do like your baseline profit. It has to be 10% more this year, 9% more this year, 20% more. It's like, you have to keep doing this.
What's interesting is there are wildly successful corporations overseas that don't have this mentality. They've approached it differently. Like to me, one of the big tests was the Japanese car makers in the United States. So when the economy tanked in 2008, I wanted to see what Toyota was going to do to its Huntsville, Alabama plant. Like, what were they going to do to the workers? Because they can't keep churning out Toyota Camrys because they're not going to sell. So in Japan, the agreement between the owning class and the working class is that they'll basically never fire you. If they have to shut down a factory because for production reasons, they'll put you on 75% pay, and then you just go to school and take classes, retool, and then as soon as they can, they bring you back into the business. If you figure out a way to get rid of a job, like there's an inefficiency in the factory, and it's your job that you got rid of, they'll put you on 75% pay, and you go to school until they can bring you back in. So there's sort of this understanding that we will take care of you, no matter what. Like if you delete your own job to make us more efficient, we'll still take care of you. Whereas in the United States, if you deleted your job to make your business more efficient, you're just out of a job. Nobody cares. You could die on the street corner. So I wanted to see what those Japanese businesses were going to do in 2008. They treated American workers like they were Japanese workers.
Interesting.
Which blew my mind because I just thought they would, they'd be like, well, they're not Japanese. We don't care. We're going to treat them like we're an American business. They didn't. Those workers, those factory workers, will never own anything but a Toyota Camry. You know what I mean? Like,
that was very anti-nationalist of them. Like
it was anti-nationalist and it was anti-capitalist, but in a way it was pro-capitalist because they also know they have a reliable workforce that will do anything and everything because that workforce knows this is a mutual thing. It's not a predatory thing. They know that they're going to get taken care of. The reason, by the way, that the Japanese created that model was the way they survived the post-World War II period. The owning class went to the worker class and went, look, we're screwed. We don't produce enough food to feed ourselves. We're going to die. We're ready to make a compromise. And I think that's something that a lot of people in the United States don't realize is you can't ask without having some kind of leverage. So in other words, if I'm a worker and I go to my employer and I want a pay raise, they might give me a 10 cents an hour pay raise. But if I was part of a union and we were working collectively, it might be better than 10 cents an hour pay raise. And because you have to have the ability to have leverage. And we're a bunch of individuals. And as a bunch of individuals, we're unique little butterflies. We're perfect in our own way, and we don't have to work.
That's so true. I just need to work on myself and get my Starbies. That's what it is. That's American culture for you. Serene, before we move on to the next section, which is going to be huge, it's going to be we're really going to explode in geopolitical analysis. Any questions you might have on revolution?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, does history show us a roadmap, right, to a proper, quote unquote, proper revolution? What are some good examples? What ideals should people strive for? And what lessons can we also learn from past failures? What do we have to avoid?
Okay, so the smaller the change, the better. That's one thing that history tells us. The revolutions that try to make the big changes ultimately end up pendulum swinging at some point. And they end up in a place where you probably didn't want to go. So if you just go through the most recent revolutions, because the first ever revolution that we know, because there probably was something before this, it just wasn't documented, took place in Memphis, Egypt, like 4,500 years ago. So we've been doing revolutions for a while. The people rose up, they captured Memphis, that was the capital of Egypt at the time, and Pharaoh had to flee with the army, and then the army came back and they fought to recapture the city. They captured it, but then they went to the people and said, look, what do we need to do to make this never happen again? And they made a compromise. At the end of the day, if you start with the US Revolution, the French Revolution, and you just start clicking through the steps, and the Soviet Revolution, the Chinese Communist Revolution, the 1960s, and you start comparing all these revolutions, you will start to get despondent and a little hopeless, because in the end, every one of these revolutions didn't work out, I think, the way we had hoped they were going to. And so what experience looking at that, I think, teaches us is you want to go slowly. You want the changes to happen incrementally. And actually, Marx even talked about this a little bit. So this isn't necessarily like some super genius thing from me. Some 19th century guy was already talking about this. If you do this incrementally and slowly, people become accustomed to the change, and they're less likely to do this pendulum swing. People want there to be a little bit of a process. And so how do you create a slow revolution? That's hard to manage, right? Because oftentimes when you're in a revolution, you get carried away. And there's always that cadre of people who are like, why are we doing this slowly? Let's just make all the changes happen right here, right now. And the Soviet Union, ends up in heartbreak, because that story is not a happy story. It might have been that, had Lenin not stroked out, they would have been okay, but they weren't. They ended up with Stalin, and it didn't end up being the dream, I think, that the average communist in the streets was hoping they were going to end up with. Having said that, maybe that was part of the process, because the system that they had before was such a terrible system. Something had to give. So maybe they were in the long run better off, but certainly not in the lifetimes of the people that were part of it. The Islamic Revolution in Iran, of course, has been a complete disaster for the Iranian people. And so the answer is slow change, be careful. Your goal is to awaken people more than it is to, dramatically change institutions.
So it's kind of like slow boiling the frog. Like, because I've been posing this theory is like the capitalism has accomplished what it's done by putting us in absolute slavery by slow boiling us to it. Like we saw these increments, like the Democrats and Republicans build on each other. The Democrats will outline some policy that further enslaves us, and then the Republicans don't fix that. They just tack onto it, but with a just different flavor, and then so forth. And you built this pyramid of power that's so pervasive and it's so oppressive, but we got slow boiled to it. So I'm like, okay, this idea of revolution, if you guys, there's two ways of tackling this. We could try, and we could do both at the same time. We could have people who are pushing for a huge change through hardcore revolution and hard power by creating like a totally alternative system. And we can also slow boil society, reversing the slow boil of the frog, where we start slowly acclimating people to the idea of like anarchist calisthenics, to policies that are completely abusive and completely hostile to, say, minority groups, and police brutality and the overreaching of corporate power. So if we can slow boil the frog the other way to like somewhat of an anarchist calisthenics approach, where we stop viewing the ruling class as having any type of authority over our lives, then maybe is that like a viable option too, in that regards, when it comes to
the example that comes in my head is Sweden, but Scandinavia in general, but Sweden sort of was the trailblazer. So in 1848 there was a revolution, and that revolution lasted roughly 3 years, and it took place in every European state except the Russian Empire, the British Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. But it even took place in Ottoman vassal states that were in Europe. So all of Europe goes up into this 1848 revolution. Everywhere, but there were two major factions in the revolution. There were the nationalists and there were the socialists, which is, ironic for what happens later. But the nationalists frequently just wanted to do things like create Germany, which will happen, but it doesn't happen until 1871, or create Italy, which happens 12 years later, 1860. So that was what the nationalists were really pushing for. So they weren't necessarily nationalists in the sense that they believed that, we should kill everybody that isn't from our nation, but they were nationalists in that, wouldn't it be nice if there was a Germany? The socialists, of course, one of the socialists was Karl Marx, and he writes the Communist Manifesto during the 1848 revolution. And the hope was that there was going to be this huge change in the way labor worked in Europe and capitalism worked. And everywhere, the revolution failed. In the end, the governments came out and they literally just slaughtered the people in the factories because they had captured the factories, and then, you know, mopped the floors and brought in a new set of workers. Except Sweden. But at the time, it was the Kingdom of Sweden and Norway. They were merged together. And what happened was, instead of the king sending out soldiers to clear out the factories, he sent out negotiators. And, you know, the factory workers knew what was happening in other parts of Europe, so they were nervous about this. And the king said, look, I'm your servant, and you guys are clearly mad. I need to hear what you have to say. Let's talk. And so they talked, and they came up with a deal. And the deal is shocking, but they came up with a deal. And the deal was they would switch the parliament from a noble-led parliament into a people parliament. So the people would elect it. So as electoral republic, the king would surrender a huge portion of his power to that parliament. And then, you know, the idea would be that little by little, you'd ease away the power from the monarch to that parliament. And then they actually put blocks in place to prevent the rich from having too much influence. So they literally put checks on the rich. In return, the workers turned the factories back over. And the thinking was that the workers, through the electoral process, would slowly pull Sweden in the direction they wanted to. And the pattern was, it's breaking up now. It's not quite as good as it used to be, but you get two socialist terms and then one conservative term, then two socialist terms and one conservative term. And, you know, the thinking is the socialists are making all these reforms. They went too far. The voters brought in the conservatives. They pulled it back a little bit, and then the socialists would take over, and then they would make the reform, and then right. And so there was like this, but the general projection was in one direction. So today, Sweden is probably the most socialist state on earth ever. Mm-hmm. It's a capitalist socialist hybrid state. It is still capitalist, but it's the most socialist, like way more socialist than the Soviet Union or China ever was. People will criticize it because it's definitely not perfect by any means because, well, we're human. But it has little by little gotten in the direction that it has through this long process. And it's inspired, right? Norway broke away, got its independence, and it sort of just kept doing the same thing. When Finland got its independence from the Russian Empire, it started to do what Sweden was doing. Iceland, of course, when it got its independence from Denmark, went this path. And then, you know, other states have realized this is not the worst path imaginable. I said it's breaking down, and that's because now they're in a cycle where they're like one socialist government, one conservative, one socialist, one conservative. So they're not really going anywhere right now. They're sort of spinning their wheels. And the anti-immigrant sentiments are through the roof.
But it seems like the key ingredient here is a good leader. Or consider a leader that even wants to make a deal with the workers.
So for years, there's been this conversation in political science circles. What's more important, good institutions or good leaders? And I think I'm now ready to make that call. It is definitely good leaders, because a crappy leader will just tear the institutions apart. The institutions, right? They're vulnerable. At the end of the day, if you can't figure out a mechanism to create good leaders, you're hosed. So, you know, I made the joke in the beginning, in my heart, I'm an anarchist, but in my mind, I'm a monarchist. And it's not really a joke anymore for me, because at the end of the day, if you have a good leader, I don't care if you're a democracy or a monarchy. If you have a good leader, you're going to be successful. If you have a crappy leader, you're going to burn. It just doesn't, the system almost doesn't matter as much as how the decisions are being made. If you're a real democracy, not an electoral republic, then the way you create the good leaders, you have to have an educated public. And right, because the public is the leader in a democracy. In an electoral republic, there's this elite that you vote for. But in a democracy, the public directly votes. So if you don't have a really well-educated public that's trained in philosophy and understands the difference between an electron and a proton, you're not gonna be able to pull this off. because they're not going to be able to make intelligent policy decisions.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear your evolution of thought of how you arrived there. It's funny, and then I analyze mine. I think about how different I was a year ago. I used to be I've, like you said, I'm an anarchist at heart, and but I was a libertarian at whatever. If I had to pick a side that was out there, I was libertarian. That was like a year and a half ago. Now I'm an anarchist at heart, and because I am now, which I haven't told you or talked about this with you yet, that I'm linking up with the Black Panther Party here in the United States, and I've joined the Panther Party.
Very cool.
Yeah, during my political education with them and learning about history and things like that, I've become an anarchist at heart and an intercommunalist politically, which intercommunalism was what Huey P. Newton proposed as the latest evolution of communism, in a sense, where we needed a complete uprooting of the ruling class completely, and then create a system in which we're communities supporting each other outside of borders, and there is no ruling class whatsoever. And what I found interesting with myself is that I was always anti-vanguardism, but that's what's evolved into me, is that I realized there is a need for a vanguard. You need that cadre of wise Jedi masters who can at least provide an intelligentsia for the population, to at least give them the options that they need. And then the idea being is that we work our way out of a job to the point where there is no need for the Black Panther Party. There's no need for the Panther Party. We're all in this revolutionary space where it becomes something greater than we could have ever imagined it. So that's where I've evolved to, I guess. And it's interesting to hear how you've evolved, and seeing Serene as well, like, and talking with her, because Serene has been very transparent with her thought process, which is what gravitated me towards her and her videos, is that she was very transparent in how she's changed her mind, and she wears her evolution on her shoulder to show, like, this is where I'm going and this is what I'm thinking. And that's what made me think, like, damn, like, we got to start putting our brains together like this. We got to start combining these different approaches to political theory with people like you, Doc, and you, Serene. And I think it's very important for that revolutionary space, is to hear these perspectives. So that's my little what I call sweetheart note to you guys. So anyways,
I'm also reevaluating, my thought processes from, what he said about a monarchy, because a great example of that is Ibrahim Traore, who got into power through a coup d'etat in Burkina Faso, but look at what he's doing simply because he's a good leader. So yeah, good shit.
It's complicated is the answer, and we need to approach every situation with doubt.
Doubt.
Right. Okay, so next section is going to be on Iran and war propaganda. Now, there's three elements I want to add to this, three topics. One is I want to talk about this new challenge that the ruling class has, in which, how do we get Americans back into war? We know about the Vietnam War syndrome, which I want to get into with you, Doc. But me and Greg have been, we came up with a new term to analyze where we're at right now. What syndrome are we in right now? And we have proposed that we are currently in what we are terming the Afghanistan War syndrome, where Americans are not down for war. Not even America first, like nobody on the right, nobody on the left. It seems to be the only people who are down with war seem to be neo-libs and neocons. And that group is a shrinking. So how does the empire get us back out of the now Afghan war syndrome? They have a huge challenge on their hands because they have a huge recruiting crisis. Nobody wants to go to war except for the war hawks. And now Trump is losing a lot of his base because he's pulled off his mask as being a war hawk. So I want to play two videos. Both of them represent two extreme forms on the spectrum of war propaganda. One, Doc, you're going to immediately recognize from the get-go, because you have been doing a great job in tackling this type of propaganda towards Islam and towards Islam and xenophobia of the other. The second one is a little bit more sociopathic, and it's way more cunning, and that represents the neoliberal side of the spectrum of war propaganda. So I'm going to play the first one, the first extreme, obvious, repulsive, that everybody will recognize as straight up propaganda. And then I'm going to play the more sly version. So here's the first version. I'm going to play these two videos. Here's the most obvious racist one that we're all familiar with. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
And like every couple hundred years, Islam goes through this explosion of violence, trying to push forward this fundamentalist Wahhabist ideal on society. Just because religion isn't important to you, know that to a Muslim, it is central to their life.
Yep.
Central. It is a complete form of existence. It comes complete not just with a religion, it comes complete with a system of governments and law enshrined in Sharia, S-H-R-I-A. There was a district in Minnesota, I believe it was Keith Ellison's district, that tried to make Sharia the law of the land there. Thank goodness we have the supremacy clause, and that was quickly shot down. But in the Islamic faith, if you are not living under Sharia law, this is the way the Wahhabists believe.
Yes.
If you're not living under Sharia law, you are an apostate, which is a crime punishable by death. So this is this chasm that exists within Islam that has existed since the time of Muhammad. And every now and then, like every couple hundred years, Islam goes through this explosion of violence, trying to push forward this fundamentalist Wahhabist ideal on society. There are other elements going on, though, at the same time. We have Turkey, who is seeking to reinstitute the caliphate, not like Baghdadi, but that's where the caliphate was located before Ataturk, and Turkey became a secular nation.
All right, enough of that shit. Doc, I know you are boiling at the seams right now. I feel you. Okay, here's the next one, though. This is the next form of pro-war propaganda. So that was obviously a way to create fear amongst this boogeyman of Islam coming to take away your American freedoms. This one is to create the rainbows and butterfly version of why we should embrace war. Here we go.
Let me take you to the 1960s to show you Iran and Israel. Here at the airport in Iran, flights went every day to Tel Aviv. Not rockets, Boeing flights.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Back then, 80,000 Jews lived in Iran, and they lived in peace right next to their Muslim neighbors.
Grab more barbari bread. You'll need it to scoop up all those herbs.
Iranian students studied in Israeli universities. They spoke Hebrew, they debated politics, they made friends. The two countries even built an oil pipeline from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean.
Make sure the oil keeps flowing.
And yes, they even built weapons together.
Let's finish this before someone in Washington finds out.
The people didn't hate each other. They lived together. They partied together. They shared food and stories. And all of this stopped in 1979.
We won't be silent! Israel doesn't belong here!
Today, it's a different world. That peace is gone. But remember, if we had peace before, then maybe we can have it again. That's 1 minute. See you tomorrow.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. A lot of use of history that some is factual, some is not, some is deceptively framed. And then, of course, we have the first video, which is obvious. So we'll start with the first video, Roy, on the Islamophobia and the fear-mongering that Islam is coming to take away everything that you cherish in your life, like your freedoms and your great pay and tons of vacation that you're getting here.
Yeah. First of all, Wahhabism is only 300 years old. So if it happens every 200 years, it hasn't happened very often. So first of all, I mean, there's so many wrong things in what he said. But one of them is that if you don't live under Sharia law, you're an apostate. So in Islam, just to be clear, non-Muslims have a pathway to heaven and have to be treated with respect. That's actually built into the religion. So this idea that the religion mandates that you be at war with Christians or Jews or Buddhists or Hindus is actually nonsense. Having said that, there's obviously been leaders who have misinterpreted Islam and said stuff to that effect. Whereas by contrast, in Christianity, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, you are doomed to burn in hell. So actually, if you were going to compare the two religions, Islam has built-in tolerance that is mandated, like from the time of the Prophet. This is not something you can even debate. And so this trying to cast the entire religion as having been or becoming evil from time to time is just absurd. Historically speaking, Middle Eastern states are tolerant, peaceful. They would rather trade than fight. The Persians, of course, did this even before Islam. This isn't necessarily a Muslim thing. It's very much a Middle Eastern thing. And then most of the wars that take place in the Middle East was because somebody invaded. So, for example, the Crusaders, as an example, the Mongols, another fantastic example, and the Romans, for that matter, until the Romans themselves became Middle Easterners, right? The Roman Empire's capital for its last thousands of years of existence was Constantinople, which is in Turkey. So I guess the Roman Empire ended up, at least its last 1,000 years, as a Middle Eastern empire. In any case, this idea that somehow Islam is this really violent religion is just, it's ahistorical. It's a nonsensical way of looking at the world. But it's this boogeyman thing, right, that politics likes to do, because there's nothing that drives voters to the voting booth like fear and hatred. And so if you can turn Muslims into the new Jews, since it's not cool to be this way towards Jews, then you sort of can replace the boogeyman that Europe used to have, which was the Jewish population, with the Muslim population. Irony is, of course, the majority of Muslims are not Arab in the world. The majority of Muslims in the United States are not Arab. Also, just to be clear, the majority of Muslims in the United States are South Asian. The majority of Arabs in the United States are Christian. Also, just to be clear. But I still think it's hilarious that that there's this anti-Arab thing that's also linked to the anti-Muslim thing. Since Arabs are Semites, it feels like it's just a continuation of anti-Semitism. It's just taken this new form, and the tragedy is that it's now pitted Semites versus Semites in this really strange scenario in Palestine and Israel. But historically, it makes no sense, like the argument that the Muslims are coming to get you. Also, Muslims are like, 1.2% of the US population. If somehow Sharia law did become the law of the land, you'd have to wonder what happened to the other 98.8% that they didn't do anything to stop it. Like,
right.
What went wrong with you? Like, I don't know.
It must have just been so it must have been so terrible that people just were like, you know what, it's so terrible, I like it. I'll like it, and I'll just live like
I'm
this.
sick of capitalism and Trump. I'm ready to try Sharia law. And
right.
What's also interesting is how many states in the Muslim world are either secular or heading towards some form of secularism, and they're sort of swinging that direction. At the same time, the United States is heading towards becoming Gilead. You know what I mean? Like, so
one of my favorite video that I saw of you, and it was only like, I think it was like the second video I saw of you ever. And this is before I could start remembering your name, but it was the and me and Serene were talking about this, and it was my favorite because it is been something that I've been crying on the rooftops for like 15 years. After I was a Zionist, I don't know if he told you my story. I traveled to Israel. I was an evangelical Zionist. I went to go study abroad at the Hebrew Ulpan program, and I was going to join the IDF. And then I fell in love with Palestine because I just, something about their culture really resonated with me, and I realized, holy shit! Like I don't know why, but like I gravitate towards them more than the Israelis, because the Israelis are fucking psychotic Nazis, the way that their culture is and the way that their society is. And so I went through a whole depression period, and then I just had to accept the fact that I am pro-Palestinian, and I had to let go of evangelical Zionism completely, and which led me to where I am today. But one thing that really started to grow in my heart was the fact that these Palestinians behave strangely like ancient Israelite and Hebrew culture, and I'm like, I wonder if they're the real Hebrews, and that these white people here are just white people from Europe who are claiming to be like the ancient Hebrews. And I'm like, I wonder if there's any DNA tests. And I saw a DNA study come out that said that 90% of Palestinians are more Hebraic than anybody else on this planet. And then I saw your video saying that the irony is there's such a bitter, embittering irony that you have people who are far less Jewish killing other people who are far more Jewish than they are in the name of Judaism. And that to me was just like, finally, somebody's saying that. Exactly what I've been telling people. So that I don't know what my question is here. I just wanted to point that out, that like when you said that, I think it opened the floodgates of knowledge about changing people's perception of this false narrative that this is a war between Judaism and Jews and Arabs and Arab Muslims, especially when you look at the actual DNA of it all.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the DNA is ironic, but it's not important, and I'll say why it's not important. Yeah, it's not important because a person's ancestors are just that. They're not you. You gain nothing from them. You think you do, right? Like when I watched the opening scene of Gladiator, I'm part Italian. I'm totally getting off on how brutal the Roman legionnaires are, but I'm also part German, so I'm really confused in that scene. I don't know which side I want to win. At the end of the day, it's all fantasy. I'm not really a Roman or a German from 2,000 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, it's Marcus Aurelius, so 1,800 years ago, 1,850 years ago. I'm not that guy. So at some level, it's just me sort of living this fantasy of the myth of my origin. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm pointing that out is because that is what unfortunately drives so much human behavior, is this I am X, I belong in this place, I need to fight for it for some kind of either religious or mythical reason, some kind of nationalist reason. At the end of the day, I think anybody should be allowed to live wherever the hell they want to. And this idea that there's a country for one person or one group of people is just amazing, that we're still having these kinds of genocidal conversations, because that's the basis of this. The Nazis wanted a Europe that had no Jews in it. So in so many ways, the Zionist project is just the fulfillment of the Nazi dream, because if you can get the Jews out of Europe, then you've succeeded in doing what they were trying to do. And then the irony, of course, is you get them into the Middle East where they're killing fellow Semites. They're killing people who are even more Jewish than they are genetically, even if they're no longer Jewish. But there were Jews living in Palestine. There were Jews living throughout the Arab world. Morocco, Egypt, Yemen, Iraq, Syria all had really large Jewish populations. And the other horrible thing that Israel has done is it's ethnically cleansed those populations. Most of the Jewish Moroccans ended up in Israel. Most of the Jewish Iraqis ended up in Israel, and most of the Jewish Egyptians ended up. And why? Those cultures were vibrant, beautiful, wonderful, amazing cultures that had their own music style. They had their own, traditions, and they're being now absorbed by this European fantasy of what a Middle Eastern society should be like. And it's tragic. One of the things I want to see happen is the reconstitution of those societies. I went to Morocco in 2018, and my wife and I decided we were going to go to as many synagogues as we could. And it was to mourn the loss of that community. And one of the first synagogues we went to was in the middle of Casablanca. And so the government has done, I don't know how many millions of dollars worth of work preserving the historical aspects of the synagogue, and to the point where they built a museum. So the synagogue can still function, but then like the historical artifacts are in the museum, so you can go through the museum and look at it. So we do the museum tour. It's a cute little museum, nothing huge or anything like that, and go through the synagogue. We came around the corner and there was a note taped to the door of the first apartment. Like the wall of that apartment is the wall of the synagogue. And so we stopped. It was written in French, English, and Arabic. And the note said, "I am the son of the last rabbi who served in that synagogue, and I'm still here. I will never leave. I am Jewish. There are still Jews in Morocco, and we're holding on." And basically, he said, acting like this is an act of defiance. We then went to Essaouira, which, by the way, if you ever go to Morocco, go to Essaouira. It is one of my favorite towns on the whole planet, not just Morocco. Love that place. Here, I'll just give you one little example. When the stores close, they don't lock their doors. They'll put like a piece of wood in front of the store. So if you wanted to, you could just literally rob the store because they don't close. There's nothing stopping you from just walking into their store and taking everything and just walking out. I want to live in that world. Like I can't even. What
that's
the heck
anarchy. That's the anarchy dream, utopia, right there.
Like a community that takes care of itself. By the way, you can't haggle in Essaouira. They don't do that. So the price is the price. They've already lowered it, so they've got the right profit. It's every town in Morocco is like going to a different country. It has different architecture, it has a different feel, it has a different culture. It's amazing. So we're in Essaouira and we're in the Jewish quarter. And we went into this one synagogue. It was this cute little synagogue that was sort of like underneath houses and up against stores. And, the government has put all this money into preserving this thing and taking care of it. The next synagogue over, the government actually, it was collapsing. So the government went in, tore down the collapsing part, not all of it, and then rebuilt it. But they preserved part of it so that you can still see the old ruins. And then they took all the artifacts out, tore down the part that they couldn't salvage, rebuilt it, put everything back in. So we go upstairs. And there's a woman standing there, and she's clearly somehow related to the synagogue. And my wife goes, "Do you work here?" And the woman says, "Yeah, I'm like the curator for the museum part of the synagogue." And so my wife goes, "Are you Jewish?" And she says, "No, I'm Muslim." And then my wife says, "Why put all this money into preserving these synagogues?" And the woman said, the woman said, "The Jewish people that were here are part of our society, and we're waiting for them to come back. And we're going to take care of their stuff, their synagogues, their property, until they come back." And she said, "Morocco can never heal and can never be whole until our Jews come back." And of course, at this point, my wife and I are in tears. And my wife said, "Are you succeeding?" And the woman said, "We've made inroads. There are now Jews from Europe and Israel who come here every summer, and we hire a rabbi for them. It's on the government's bill. And they've now bought summer homes here, and we're hoping that they'll find a job. They'll just start living here permanently." And she said, "We won't rest until they come home."
Wow.
And that's actually what the Middle East actually looks like. The violence and the war and all the stuff that the news constantly portrays, that's a piece because of what's happening to Palestine, but it's not the norm. The norm is this mourning for the loss. Egypt has a similar story. Egypt gave a whole city block in Cairo so that there could be a Jewish community center, and they put a gigantic Star of David on it, and they said, "Please come back, come home."
Which is so ironic because one of the biggest Zionist talking points is, well, the Arabs kicked this out. of every country. And it's funny. I was just like about a year ago, I came across this Israeli, I think he's also British historian. His name is Avi. Let me look it up. Avi Shalom, something like that. Don't quote me on it. But his parents were Iraqi. And he was reminiscent about, some stories that his parents were telling him there. And he got in contact with a Mossad agent that was in Iraq. And apparently a lot of these attacks against the Jews were orchestrated. So it almost sounds like a setup, right? You're saying how sad it is. It is, but it's almost like a setup to get all the Jews in one location on the planet to. Now, I don't know what's the plan after that, but I don't want to get morbid here, but it could be very morbid when you think about what might be the bigger plan. Because why? They were coexisting with their fellow Christians and Muslims and all these communities. And I'm actually surprised. I didn't know this was the sentiment till this day in Middle East countries. So that's the greatest irony of all.
I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but I'm going to take a chance anyway. The last Jewish Yemeni community was being surrounded by a military force with the intention of wiping them out. And they killed like the elder who was in charge of the community. And because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk about it, I'll make it vague. An Arab state sent in their elite soldiers, right? Their special forces. They shot their way through the force that had surrounded that Jewish community, got in, and they evacuated them and brought them to their Arab state. And they're living. They hired a rabbi. They set up a synagogue for them, and those Jews are allowed to live indefinitely in this Arab state. The Arab state has provided them with housing and has said, stay as long as you want. When you want to go to Yemen, you're ready to go to Yemen, go. If you don't want to stay, you're always welcome here. So that it's not a bizarre story. This is the actual norm. One of the things that I think people get confused about is the understanding of the Middle East is Jews aren't the problem, Israel's the problem. And there's a very clear separation between the two. In most people's minds, right? There's always that person who doesn't understand, but the majority of people understand. Even when there's been events where there's been like anti-Christian violence. So I was in Egypt in 2010 and on New Year's, and there was an attack on a church in Alexandria. A terrorist blew up a car, and Coptic Egyptians, the Christian Egyptians, like to go to church on New Year and pray the New Year in. And so this terrorist brought this car full of explosives in, and I don't remember how many people he killed in the church, 25, something like that. And I ended up having dinner at a Christian Egyptian house. I want to say it was 3 days later or something like that. And I said, how do you feel about this violence? And the woman in the house said, there is a group of people who are crazy and they're fanatic and they don't understand how Egypt works. But the majority of Egyptians, Muslim and Christian, do. The Christians cannot function without the Muslims. The Muslims cannot function without the Christians. We are Egyptians. Most people understand that. And so it's easy to live here because I know I'm loved by my Muslim brothers and sisters. 4 days later, because January 7th is Egyptian Christmas.
Yeah.
That, because of the violence that had just happened 6 days earlier on January 1st, when I walked past the church, there was this mob of Muslims that had completely surrounded the church, and they would make pathways as Christians were approaching to go to church, and they were holding up signs that said, if you want to kill our Christians, you have to blow us Muslims up first. And that's been my experience in the Middle East. There's this, the majority of people understand that all this religious stuff is bullshit. And the reality is that everybody, you know each other. You went to school together. You're friends. Your children play together. Like there's that understanding, and that the rest of it is just evil politics done by evil people who are doing cruelty to one another. And because of that separation, it gives me enormous hope for the Middle East. I do think that at some point, maybe it'll be 2048, there will be a moment where this will go away and we won't have to deal with this anymore. And part of the reason I believe that is because of all the Israeli voices and all the Jewish voices that have come out and denounced Zionism and have become voices for peace. And like Ilan Pappé and Gabor Mate, and just it's disheartening. Yeah. And it's just a really good reminder that at the end of the day, the categories we stick each other in, they're just bullshit. They're nonsensical. We need to stop putting people in categories.
Yeah.
That's my same exact experience, growing up in Palestine. My family is Eastern Orthodox as well. And our whole, 90% of our village is Muslim. And the Muslims take care of the church and the Christians take care of, the schools. And it's like everything just works together. So with that, I do have to leave, but go ahead.
Okay. No, as a Christian, I was completely embraced by Palestinian Muslims. And I wound up not even spending too much time with Palestinian Christians. It was Palestinian Muslims, to the point where I can honestly say that Islam made me a better Christian. And I know that's bizarre sounding to certain people who are not familiar with Islam. But for me, I told them, listen, Islam basically purified my theology and my outlook on following the path of Jesus. And I found Jesus through Palestinian Muslims, particularly by the way that they behaved and by the way that they walked their faith. I said, I want to be like that, because they're walking the path that Jesus lined out better than most Christians in the United States, in my opinion. So it's like, I want to be that, but I want to be on the, I want to be a Muslim, to have that sense of faith and be a Christian as well. And they guided me along. And I can say that I honestly refined my theology and my belief system based on Islam, believe it or not.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. That makes total sense to me. Okay, one more thing, because I know Serene has to go.
Yeah.
One of the coolest museums on earth is the Coptic Museum in Old Cairo. But what people mess up when they go to it. So when you go to it, there's lots of stuff. There's ancient stuff. There's medieval stuff. There's stuff that's more modern. It's a wonderful, sweet space. The screw up is you need to look up. People don't know they're supposed to look up. When they were making the museum, by the way, in the 19th century, I think the museum is like 150 years old or something like that. When they were making the museum, the Coptic noble who was making the museum, he was spending a bunch of money on this, went to a bunch of mosques and pulled the ceilings out of the mosques. Those mosques were being torn down because they were being modernized, or they were being, that part of the city was being redeveloped. And so he saved the interior, the ceilings of these mosques, and he stuck them in the Christian museum. And the reason that made perfect sense is because the Copts were the carpenters of Egypt, and they were brilliant. They could do lattice work that required calculus to figure out how to create the angles. And so the Muslims would hire the Christians to basically design the interior decorations for their mosques. So even though it's the interior of a mosque, it was made by a Christian. And that's the kind of intertwinedness. It makes total sense when you're in the Middle East. Nobody gives a second thought to how weird it is that there's mosque interiors inside of a Christian museum. But to Americans, it's alien, because we don't like that. We segregate everything. We segregate religiously, by neighborhood. Our music is segregated. Our schools are segregated. Our churches are segregated. We just want people to fit in these boxes, and we make assumptions about them and then move on. And that's why Americans, that might be the way you get your revolution. Force every American to travel. And by travel, I don't mean to Northwestern Europe. I don't mean to Canada. I mean, actually go to a place that's different. Africa, someplace in Africa, north or south, I don't care, east or west, South America, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and make them have a foreign experience so they can interact with people from different cultures. Because once you do, it changes the way you see the world.
Absolutely.
That's
And not
great.
traveling to, you know, the touristy areas for your Instagram pictures, but actually being with people, you know, because that's the trend now. People are going to Africa and going to Southeast Asia, but it's not to be with the people and understand the culture. It's still that American, you know, mindset. But yeah, that is what is needed. With that said,
Serene, when can we have you back? When can I
Um,
have both of you back?
you know my schedule. I'm usually free around this time because my clients, we do like evening or super morning meetings. So early morning, I want to say between 10 a.m., 2 p.m. Usually those are open slots for me on weekdays.
Okay.
When it comes to weekends, Saturday, I don't work. You know, that's my rest day. Sunday afternoon, you know, that also works.
Roy, can we have you back soon, please?
Yeah, let's make something happen. I'm gonna be traveling for the next 2 months, but we'll figure something out. Like I can always what?
You need to meet Greg as well.
Okay.
The other host of this show. This is my first time on this show.
Oh, cool.
I wanted you all to myself, Roy. That's why I didn't have Greg on this
That's
one,
right.
because me and him can get alpha male with our with our shit. So I'm like, it's not no. Roy's mine today. We're not having him, and then next time you'll have a shot at him. So that's
Okay. That sounds good.
But Roy, just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you on behalf of all the people who have come up to me and said that you changed their lives with your perspectives and how you have broken down these misperceptions that have been fed to us by the ruling class to get us to hate each other and continue on this war machine and imperialism. You don't realize the impact you're having. You never will, because you're not on social media as much as we are. But I want to tell you, from a ground view, you're having a huge impact, and you will never see that, unfortunately, but we see it. I love you to death, Roy. I love you to death, Doc. Yeah, that's right. You know what? Fuck it. No, everybody hates you, Roy. Don't let it get to your head.
I embrace the hate.
Embrace the hate. love you guys. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great weekend. All right. All right, here we go. Peace out, guys. 3, 2, 1.
I don't know how to hang up. Stop. How do I hang up? How do I hang up? Do, 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 do.